see if I can find, oh, Councilwoman Taylor's here. I'll look for Matt Jessup.
I can, oh, here he is. I've got him. I'll,
Okay, thank you.
I can move him to a panelist.
Great.
Okay. All right, so it seems like folks are logging on now. Cindy, would you mind, Matt, nice to see you. Would you mind reading the various compliance statements?
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act with the meeting notice provided on Friday, March 9th, 2021 to the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Trenton Times, and various individuals on the listserv, department heads, city engineer, and city attorney. This meeting will be recorded using the Zoom meeting platform. The meeting agenda offers planned action items of the governing body to the extent known at the time of publication. Would you like a roll call, Mayor?
Please, thank you.
Councilwoman Lambert.
Here.
Councilman Sanders.
Here.
Councilman Stegman.
Here.
Council President Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Fall.
Here. Okay. Can I ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll ask you to remain standing for a moment of silence to reflect on our members of service at home and abroad, and also those who are fighting on the COVID-19 front lines. Thank you. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's joining us tonight for our special session regarding the acquisition of the Clausen property. Before we get started, I want to note here that Councilman Sanders is unable to make it by computer, but he is here on the phone, and so we do have all members of our council with us tonight. So with that, I think we can just break right into the agenda here. There's been some significant changes to the agenda from our initial, the initial agenda that was sent out. So I do want to just note that really quickly. The first portion of our agenda is going to be a resolution regarding basically codifying the policy that this council would like to have a full project plan for the Clausen site prior to any significant, improvement or any improvement expenditure on the site. So I want to open that up for any council comment, but to sort of frame this for the public, we understand that not every question has been answered about the Clausen, how the city intends to use the Clausen site. We know that the primary driver of us acquiring this property is to have this site available for public open space, for the general public access, and most importantly for both historic and general preservation of the site to stop overdevelopment. I want to remind everybody as we get started here that the as of right development for that site is currently 13 single family homes. And so the governing body is, while we may not totally know exactly how we're going to be using this property for public use, we want to ensure that we can acquire the site to avoid having a developer purchase and develop that site. And so the goal here with this resolution is to agree that we will get a fuller understanding of the project scope and the project plan before we make significant improvement to the Clausen property. So with that, I'll turn it over to the council for any questions or comments.
Mayor, on the resolution, I had looking at it, I had a concern with, I believe it was this, and I apologize, I don't have it because of my circumstances in front of me, but the second paragraph dealt with a future event. So I think we can just strike that. I don't know that it adds to the discussion because it kind of references something we may or may not do in the future. I believe it was the second paragraph. So my recommendation would be to strike that, move forward with the resolution, but to address the problem of trying to identify a future act when we can't be sure of what that future act is precisely going to be.
I'm open to that recommendation, Councilman. Can I ask Mr. Opal, do you have any concerns regarding that edit?
No, if the governing body is, excuse me, agreeable to that, then we can strike that language from the resolution. It'll be noted in the minutes, and the final form can reflect the language that the governing body wishes it to reflect.
Excellent. So, Councilman, unless there are any questions or concerns from members of council, I'm happy to make that edit.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry. This is the same document you sent out yesterday at 5:30, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is in this document that is in addition or different from what the council's responsibilities already are, or privileges, or what's the gap that we're trying to cover here?
This is not trying to cover a gap, Councilwoman. This is a covenant between members of the council with the public to state what we believe the policy should be moving forward on how we approach the next step post-acquisition of the property. So this is a policy statement. I think we should make it clear to the public that we understand some of the public's concerns, that not every question about the use of this property has been answered, and that we intend to, as a governing body, consider those options, create a project plan in a reasonable amount of time so that the public can use this site, and to do that instead of doing this in an ad hoc fashion, to create a plan. And that's what we're codifying here, that agreement amongst each other.
Is that not already our covenant with respect to the regulations that govern, that we operate under, that we have to approve bills within certain thresholds?
So I think you're misunderstanding me.
I think I must be, yes.
So I'm not trying to expand or contract the council's powers. I'm trying to codify an agreement amongst us that we will agree on a full project plan, and that project plan will be agreed upon and reviewed by this council prior to significant expenditures, so that the public can understand that while it may be a policy that we all individually hold, that this is an agreement we're making together in front of the public to ensure that they know that we are planning on taking a holistic approach to the use of this property.
Okay.
If you have concerns about it, I think this is the time that we can have a discussion.
I just don't see the need for it, because it seems like that's what we do in our job in this role. That's how we're supposed to operate. So to me, this is sort of unnecessary.
May I, Mayor?
Please, Council President.
I think there's two issues we're talking about here. One is, in our normal job, we are required to approve by resolution any contracts. So any spending on something that requires a contract requires council to approve it, which means that contract can't be entered into nor spent upon without our approval. What this resolution is doing is saying that in the circumstance that there is money allocated for improvements at the Clausen site, which has not been determined yet, we haven't gotten to that part of the meeting yet. If that happens, that this body agrees as an entire body that no spending will happen until a site plan is approved. There's nowhere else that says a site or project plan has to happen before spending can happen. But spending always requires council approval. Does that help or muddy the waters?
Okay,
I mean, Councilwoman, this is your opportunity. If you have concerns about it or if you'd like edits, I would like to hear them. I think this is an important question to answer here so that we are saying, rather than just saying we can send, the council could approve ad hoc expenditures, we're saying as a policy, we'd like to take this as a more fuller approach.
it seems superfluous to me. So I have no edits to it.
Are you concerned about if it is potentially a duplicative addition so that we can ensure that folks know that that's our policy? Or is there concern about that duplication?
Yeah, because I guess like does the bond not tell us what we can spend the money on? Or is the bond is kind of ambiguous, right? At this point, it's not specific.
That's correct. We wanted to introduce a bond that gave the council leeway to answer the questions about the full project plan and then spend that money accordingly.
So I guess I'm struggling to understand why this wasn't incorporated into the bond. This aspect.
Well, we have our bond counsel here, Matt. I didn't realize I was going to be throwing this to you so quickly, but I think if I can reinterpret the councilwoman's question, is it, have you seen before these types of resolutions included in bond ordinances in other municipalities?
Mayor, I have not. Good evening, everyone. Matt Jessup from McManaman, Scotland and Bauman. It's nice to see you all. I have not seen this type of resolution or agreement amongst the council to essentially fully understand a plan before you start spending piecemeal and all of a sudden realize you're halfway down a road when you haven't actually fully maybe agreed on the plan yet. And I suspect that's what this is trying to protect against. That language typically does not go into a bond ordinance. It certainly is not something that I believe would be required to be done by ordinance. It can be done by resolution, which is probably why normally if it's done at all, it is done by resolution. And it's not common in the bond ordinance, in part because the bond ordinance is only required to provide a reasonable description for identification purposes. So you have a general sense of what the project is. You're talking about sort of a little bit more of the intricate details, and that tends to get flushed out through mechanisms like this. That said, as a general matter, what can be done by ordinance can be done by resolution. So there's nothing to say that you could not put this language in a bond ordinance, because you can't do it the other way around, but you can certainly put in an ordinance something that you could otherwise do in a resolution and have it effective 2 meetings plus 20 days or so, as opposed to being effective this evening.
Right. So I think to further answer your question, Councilwoman, I felt that it was important that we, be very clear with the public about what our policy is here, in part because I think that there's some confusion between between bonding and spending. And I think that this is a good way to clarify, all agree on what we're intending to do over the course of the next year, and also to clarify and I think shore up some confidence that we are not going to be doing this in a piecemeal fashion. I was hoping that was a policy we could all agree to.
The only difference.
I'm sorry, Councilman Stegman, I don't want to interrupt, but Councilwoman Taylor did have her hand up.
Oh, there you are. I didn't see your hand up. Oh, now you're down there.
Sorry, yeah, it moves us around if we raise
It
hands.
It does.
Thank you. For everybody's, to clarify for everyone, this resolution is not something that is normal, as we've just heard. It is something that I requested when speaking with the mayor, because I have significant concerns that we don't have a full project plan yet. And I think it is important that we agree as a body that we know what we're spending on and why. And I think at least last time I spoke to everyone, we all could agree on that. And so to me, that's the purpose of this, which is to say, if it's advantageous for us to bond for work on this site that has yet to be fully finalized, we should agree not to spend until we have a fully finalized project or site plan. So, I mean, that was my rationale here. And I don't think it's a shock to anyone to acknowledge that the full project or site plan isn't done yet. So that's clear, that's on the table. Nobody's hiding that. We want to make sure that we get one before we spend money.
Councilman Stegman?
Thank you. I think one of the questions is when we to pass a resolution, it's the majority of the council. Is it the council, Bill? Is it present council? The council that are present at a meeting when it's the majority?
Quorum, if there's,
Quorum.
assuming there's a quorum, a majority of the quorum that's present at the meeting.
Okay, so it takes it doesn't take as many folks to agree than it does to agree in what we put in a bond. So it's a little concerning to me, but that's the way our system works, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Councilman, can you explain further? You think?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm hoping for unanimity on an agreement that we would all, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councilwoman Taylor that we should have a fleshed out project plan. I assume
absolutely.
that was, so I'm not sure why it matters how many votes it needs to pass this resolution.
No, I know that I think there should be an agreement among the council. I'm just asking for clarity. That's pretty much it. I think that
I'm sorry, can you explain though? I'm
Sure.
just really curious here.
If I think we should all approve that's what we want to do, that we should all have meetings and be on the same page. So I'm fine with the ordinance. That's the way it is anyway, usually, right? For the majority to vote. So I think we should all agree to do exactly what this resolution puts forward.
Right. So this is a policy recommendation that I've made with Council President Taylor. And I'm looking to the rest of council to see if we can come to a covenant together and agree that this should be the policy of the council moving forward.
I think the more that we get to talk about it, the better it is. I mean, once we move forward, the more to have consensus and follow the things set out in the resolution. I think we're fine.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, we're going to vote on the resolution. I think the resolution is okay, and let's adopt the resolution.
Okay, so
I'm good with it. Go ahead. No, I'm good with it.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask the question about the number of votes. So once we're in it, once we start to decide which way we're going, the number of votes that would be needed to approve a contract or hire or fund certain projects. But
so, Councilman,
but that's
again,
what it set up.
This resolution doesn't change the powers of the governing body.
Absolutely right.
The policy. This is an agreement amongst us on our policy moving forward on how we deal with the acquisition and improvement on the Clausen site.
Yeah,
it doesn't change the powers of how we would approve a contract.
I understand. That's fine. I just want public to know that there's what the process is and how it works. And that's fine. I agree with the policy decision.
Okay.
Mayor, I can't raise my hand, but can I?
You may. Yes, go ahead.
I just in this discussion about the form of making this, I don't want us to lose, or the public especially, to lose the substance. So, and we're talking about whether we need a resolution, we don't really need a resolution. I think, if I'm not mistaken, what I hope that the public walks away with is that each member of the governing body is saying that they do not want to move forward with any expenditures improvements at the facility unless there's a site plan, unless and until there's a site plan, at which time we'd look at the site plan and then we would consider whether we want to spend money. But with absent a site plan, we do not intend to move forward with improvements.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman.
Okay.
I think that's expertly said. So are there any other questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, Cindy, can I get a roll call?
Did we have a motion in a second?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Duh. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution as it stands?
So moved.
Council President Taylor for the first.
Mayor, if I can cut in, I'm sorry. It's as amended.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Council President for the first. Do you want
Second.
to hear a second? Oh, Councilman Sanders for the second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes. Okay, moving on. We've had an edit in our in the ordinance title, and I'm sorry, is there a title edit, Bill? The same title.
Would you like me to read it into the record?
Cindy, would you mind? Thank you.
A bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of property known as 260 North Main Street and related site improvements in and by the city of Lambertville in the county of Hunterdon, New Jersey, appropriating $3,770,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,590,470 bonds or notes of the city to finance part of the cost thereof.
Excellent. Thank you, Cindy. So I want to note a couple of quick things here prior to us moving to council discussion. And then because I think that this is such a important meeting for us, I am going to open it up for public comment prior to the vote. I will note here, we've got about 145 people on the line, which I think should indicate to folks how deeply important this discussion is. And I want to thank everybody for giving up their Thursday night for, we'll say, the third time this month. So we've got a couple of things going on here. The first is that we have the acquisition of the site, which is about $2.75 million, $2.73 million for the actual site acquisition. Initially, my recommendation to the
Mayor,
council.
I'm sorry, just so there's no confusion, that acquisition figure is the total 2.81 less the 75,000 deposit.
Thank you, Council President. I really appreciate your clarification there. My initial recommendation and initial plan was to introduce the full potential site costs for this, which included the potential rehabilitation of the Clausen's log cabin to a police station, as well as creating some available open space and necessary sort of generic site improvements, including fixing the road, access to utilities, etc. Upon conversation with members of the council, as I know that this has been the question of where our police site should move has been one that is extremely political. I chose to introduce a bond ordinance that instead removed the possibility of us rehabilitating that log cabin at this time. I did that in large part, not because I don't think it's the best possible option for the city, which I do, but because I wanted to remove the politics of this site, where I felt there was contention amongst the council, and get to a place where we can acquire this property, we can do the site improvements and project improvements so that we can make it accessible to the public, And we can do that in a way that is both financially and fiscally responsible, and also gets us to a place where we can open up this space to the public as quickly as possible. In having those conversations and considering how to push this bond ordinance forward, I worked with Council President Taylor to also put together the resolution we just passed to ensure that we had an agreement with the public that said we will spend money on this site as we get a project plan together, that we have a lot of public, direct public communication with, but that we do so in a way that is also financially responsible for us, so that we are not just acquiring this site and leaving and then expecting to sort of pay for improvements we know are going to be required at a later date, that we fund this project as fully as possible. I think that's the most responsible thing to do. So with that, we have put a significant amount of money in this bond, a little less than $1 million, to get those site improvements together, to ensure that we have money to pay for public accessibility of the site, public maintenance of the site, and that we have the ability to also do a much more rigorous project plan. That's the goal that we're putting forward here. What we are trying to avoid is acquiring the site without and then sort of allowing it to languish without significant improvement. So with that, I think I can turn it over. Oh, I will say one other quick thing here, which is that was that was a gigantic policy shift for me. I feel and felt very strongly that we should be bonding because there is a high potential that we are going to sell our police station this year, that we should have bonded for that full amount. However, I think we will be better for being able to continue to push that conversation along separately, because we all know that this site is of such significant cultural importance to our community. I'll note before I open it up for public, for the council discussion and then for public discussion, that we do not know that we need the full $1 million for that site improvement. And we have a pretty significant amount of time, we'll say 3 years as a conservative lift, to cancel portions of that bond or amend the bond with no financial impact. So we have an opportunity to do the studies that are required for a robust public conversation, create the project plan we've all agreed that we need, and then invest in the baseline infrastructure that we already know that we need. And we can do that in a way that if it turns out that the project plan requires far less infrastructure, we can cancel that portion of the bond or amend that bond and reduce the debt impact at that point. So I think as long as we've got those sort of facts and figures out on the table, I'll open it up for council comment.
I have some concerns I'd like to make public about this. For the last couple of years, the city's heard that we have a very dire financial situation. We're unable to maintain our existing buildings. There was talk of having to sell them. And now we're looking to bond $3.7 million to essentially double our facilities inventory without any plan, of how we're going to, well, without really considering how we're going to take care of the buildings we have in addition to these buildings. Plus, one of these new buildings is pretty much twice as old as the oldest building we already own. And as someone who lives in a 100-year plus home, it's expensive, okay? Because old homes require a lot of tender loving care. So I have that concern about this. I have a question regarding the cost for the annual household. On the city website, the FAQs say it's $15.65 annually per average household. And I understand these are estimates.
Oh, I'm sorry,
based on-
Councilwoman, that's not the case. What it says on the website is that it's $15.62 over 25 years, not annually. This annual number is directly under that, which is, I think it's 62 cents a year. And that's not new tax, it's reappropriated tax.
Okay,
So
so,
there's a big difference between 62 cents and $15.
well, okay, so that's fine. The question I was going to ask was back in January, a Mr. Paul Stevens asked about a different figure that he came up with, $127 per household. And I'd just like to know where we stand with that reconciliation of that discrepancy.
It's not a discrepancy. Mr. Stevens is looking at an operating dollar, and I'm looking at a capital dollar. We had a long talk about it. In fact, Julia Taylor was able to mediate that we are functionally saying the same thing, but coming from different, just from different views of how these dollars are allocated in the budget. And so, you know, there is no discrepancy here. What we know is that this project is budget neutral, that it does not increase the annual debt service payments for any for the city over 25 years. And that includes not just this project at this price, but also assuming a $450,000 annual capital improvement budget, which would include things like improving our current buildings, improving our roads, continuing to invest in our public infrastructure. And this is something we've talked a lot about over the last 6 months as we, as a community, have been debating the acquisition of this, including in meetings that you've been sitting here as a member of council. We've talked openly that we don't think that it's appropriate for the city to be maintaining these buildings, and that likely a project plan that we move forward on would include either the lease or sale of many of these outbuildings that we don't want to maintain long-term. I agree with you. In fact, I have been advocating for years that the city get out of the old building business.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. My apologies.
No, not at all. These are hard to deal with. But however, I just like to say, you know, this property is so important, and we negotiated the longest possible term to study this. There's no way that we could have figured out a full plan for what we were going to do with this site. We had 6 months to debate and to figure out, is it true that this will not increase debt service payments? Yes. Is it possible for us to acquire this site and make it open for public use? Yes. Is this generally popular and supported by the general public? Yes. And so I think, unfortunately, we are in the position where we have to decide as a council if that is enough information to acquire this property and to ensure that we have the money to improve and maintain it. I think that it is.
You have a follow-up?
Go ahead. I just want to say one thing. It seems like we're just swapping one set of historic buildings for another. And I don't understand why, if we have the bandwidth to take on this additional debt, we're not trying to salvage our existing historic properties, and that we may want to get rid of them or sacrifice them, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. And I just don't understand the logic behind that.
Well, I'm happy to discuss this the historic preservation logic in particular. I disagree with you that we are swapping these buildings. We are acquiring this building because it is on an extremely important piece of property to specifically do something that I hate to mention this early in the meeting, you ran on, which was to stop the overdevelopment of the community. And I agree with. Having 13 McMansions built on that hill would be a culture shifting change in our community. But the long-term plan for this city should not be to maintain, in my opinion, should not be to maintain the Holcomb House. However, it is important to me that we acquire this property, all warts and all, and historic gems and all, and then work to figure out how to ensure its maintenance as one of the most historically significant pieces of property that exists in Hunterdon County. And if we do not do the work of acquiring this property and creating a landmark status for that site, working with the State Historic Preservation Office, working with the National Historic Preservation Foundation, and making sure that that house exists in perpetuity as the historic landmark that it is, then I think that we have failed as a community that claims to really appreciate historic preservation. Now, you and I can disagree separately on whether or not one of the other most historically significant and beautiful pieces of property in this community, the Lilly Mansion, should be maintained by the government. I don't think it should. Nor do I think that we should be in the game of maintaining the Holcomb House. I think we need to be in the game of preserving the Holcomb House. And the only way to do that is to acquire the property.
So I also ran on controlling spending, okay? And I to be honest with you, we have a pretty precarious financial situation in our city. We had $2 million in surplus in debt service. We had hundreds of thousands of dollars in our cap banks. That's all gone. It concerns me that we're now taking on more debt when a year ago, I was having conversations with people about the amount of debt that we had in this city. As far as overdevelopment goes, the city in essence becomes a developer here. We're just doing municipal development. You're talking about a police station. You're talking about, there's talk about, there's the reopening the market. You're taking a property that currently had, up until recently, had one facility that operated for public access use, whatever. And now you're quadrupling that to 4. So you're talking about potentially putting the police there. That's your preference. Reopening a market, putting an event barn in, and potentially turning the Holcomb House into a restaurant. That's going to add paving, the asphalt, the parking, lights, vehicle traffic, noise. It is not, in my opinion, it is not retaining the pastoral quality that the property currently has. So yeah, I in this case, I think it does align with my goal of trying to stop overdevelopment, because I don't want to see a lot of municipal stuff there. And I also think we need, and I don't know what conversations took place, because this plan was, or this proposal was basically handed to me, but what other options were discussed for preserving the Holcomb House? I mean, I think it's really important to do that. But, what kind of compromise can we strike here? Because I have a concern that we're spending money we may not be able to afford to spend, and that, we have to try to preserve a significant piece of history there. And my fear is that I can't get both. I can't stop spending and stop overdevelopment with this situation. So, I think I have, to me, the fiscal aspect is more significant, because down the road, we would have to potentially raise taxes. And if we're only allowed to bond $450,000 a year for the next quarter century, what happens when we come up with the next great project that we can't afford to turn our backs on? I'm trying to think forward past the next year or two. I'm thinking forward to people who have reached out to me, who are terrified that they cannot afford to continue living in this community because there's a very cavalier approach to, we can't afford to not buy this. I mean, that's stuff I say when shoes are on sale, but I don't think that's a realistic approach for us, or a responsible approach for us to take on something this important to the entire community.
So Councilwoman Lambert, I really appreciate your thoughts here. I do have a couple of things that I want to say. The first is that we are not in a position to demand that the Clausen site stay exactly as it is in perpetuity forever, if we are unwilling to become the managers and developers of it. This is on the open market, we cannot just turn our backs and say this is what the city is recommending doing. The imagination of what could potentially be there also feels like overdevelopment, and that's too much. That paving in any way is too much. What you're demanding is zero net change on that site, and we cannot guarantee that as a community if we don't purchase it, or if we purchase it. What you're requesting there is not possible. Some amount of change on that site is going to be required. It is a question of who's the steward of that change. And I believe strongly that the only mechanism in which we can ensure that that change is minimal, that it doesn't affect the historic viewshed, that it continues to push for long-term historic preservation, is if the city is the steward of that property. If we say, I'm sorry, but the city being a developer just means different overdevelopment, then we are choosing instead to flip a coin for who buys it instead. So that's my first comment. My second is that you are absolutely right. I have worked for the last 2.5 years of my mayorship explicitly saying that the amount of money that we are borrowing was outrageous, that it was irresponsible. I used all sorts of big, scary words that, in fact, you and Councilman Stegman have both complained to me personally and on these meetings about how serious and egregious my language around that spending was. And I felt that it was a policy, a key portion of my policy as mayor to significantly reduce overall bonding, one-off bonding, these types of project bonding, instead of reinforcing long-term responsible debt accumulation for investment in our infrastructure. You are absolutely right. What I am asking the council to do makes me a hypocrite. And I am happy to say that out loud and publicly. You are absolutely right. This is an incredible amount of money for our community, but unfortunately, we are at an impasse as a community. We must decide, is the Clausen property worth the significant policy shift that I'm asking the council to do? And I think that it is. I think that the Holcomb House, that hill that our kids are sledding on every winter, that the availability of that green acre open space, that this is about the rural and cultural flavor of our community, and that if we don't do something to save it, that it will turn into housing and we can never go back. And so I'm willing to be a hypocrite to make sure that doesn't happen. Councilman Stegman?
Ben, are you done? Ben, are you finished? I mean, I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm
But
done.
now, I see behind me is a very familiar building that is from an old postcard, probably from the, oh gosh, I don't know, turn of the century or early 20s. And I want to buy it. I think we should buy it. I think we should I'm passionate about historic preservation. I don't want to get into the conversation about the other buildings that we currently have, because that, we'll work through that however we work through that. I support the purchase. Where my concern is that I'm concerned about bonding $1 million more, say, by purchasing this. I think the plan to do a site study is right on. I think it's a great way to approach this property. We know there are people in the historic preservation world, especially here, but there are people around who've written books about how best to approach a public-private partnership for a historic building, who's actually just in Philadelphia, should we want to bring somebody up. But I do not disagree with the mayor that this and the public that has approached me, because we've all heard both sides. However, I think that not purchasing this building is too risky and leaves the fate of this building to somebody else. And I'm aware that we do have some older buildings in town, and the mayor was kind enough to ask me to be on the committee that's going to be doing a facility review on these buildings. And so we'll really get, which we need, what do these other buildings need, and what do people want in them to make an informed decision. I can't sit here and say I want to sell all the buildings, because I don't. But we're getting closer to figure out what they need, what these other historic buildings need. But I don't want to get sidetracked, because I know we're talking about this, and I do support the purchase of it. Where I struggle is bonding more now than we. I will say, I don't want to use the term need incorrectly, because I see this project as we will be going to study it. And at one point, if we want to implement some of the studies, then we're going to have to do site work. I understand that. But to start to do major site work with roads and utility work and taking the barn and making it safe so we can go up in there, to be available. There's plenty of things to do on this property that doesn't, as citizens, that won't require a whole lot of site work at this
Councilman,
point.
if I can just interrupt here, because I think I've lost you here, and I want to make sure I really
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I agree with you that we should not do any significant site improvement until we have a project plan.
Yeah, I agree with you too.
Okay. So
But
you're starting to talk about different ideas that we've discussed, that we've had engineers look at, but
Yeah,
none of that will be spent until we have a site plan. In fact, we all just agreed to it 45 minutes ago.
I don't disagree with you. Where I have a concern is going out for a bigger bond when we maybe have to go out for another bond, and I would rather not over bond the my goal here is to keep the house separate, to keep whatever we do with the property separate from anything we want to do. And I've had this discussion with you and with Julie and Ward and Ben. And I'm fine with buying the property. I just don't want to buy the property and then have almost $1 million that we will just have sitting there until we have to do something with it. I just think it's cleaner. I think it's just a cleaner way. It may not be, as you have said, the most financially that makes financially sense. Thank you so much to do it, but I have a real concern about it, and I would much rather bond for the money to buy the building, and just everyone take a breath and let's see what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost, and then go out for another bond in the future to cover this. Now, that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's a struggle for me, quite honestly.
I can understand that. And I'm glad that we're able to talk about this in front of the public.
Absolutely. No, me too.
Because I think it's important because this is complicated. And that's one of the reasons I wanted Matt here. And I'll let Matt speak to this as well.
Okay.
I think it's important for folks at home to note how, and we have tried through the community advisory team, through the various municipal bonding exercises that I did in 2019, 2020, 2021, but this was complicated stuff, right? And so I think it's important to note why I'm saying that this is more financially responsible for us to do this as a current bond, so that we have some amount of money to invest in the property, that we're not acquiring the property and then saying it's cleaner to go out later. I understand that semantically, it may make more sense to sort of separate these bonds and do something down the road. But unfortunately, because of how we are paying for the acquisition of this property, we had made a statement to the public that this would not increase our debt service costs, and that we were using previously levied taxes, right? The open space tax, which was a referendum that people who lived in the city of Lambertville at that time said, we want to be taxed an extra 2 cents. We want to put away, and we want it to be used for the acquisition, maintenance, and improvement thereof for open space. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Great. And it passed with flying colors because the city of Lambertville, which we know also from our poll that the community advisory team did, that 90% of people in our community, even if they weren't sure whether or not the city should buy it, 90% of the people who answered that poll agreed that this should be preserved space. I can't get people in the city of Lambertville to agree 90% on whether or not puppies are cute, right? So, excuse me, Councilwoman, if you can just allow me to finish off, you're next on the list. So if we are using the open space bond to fund the various improvements, which we are going to, again, get a project plan for and go out for, then it is a de minimis portion of the bond. And so it means that we don't have to go out and levy another tax, which means we have done what we told people we were going to do, which is to make sure that this didn't have a direct budget impact. And instead, if we separate these bonds and the improvements are not directly related to open space, we don't know what the project plan is, but there is a good chance that we're going to have to pay for some or all of the down payment of that bond, not out of the open space tax, where that tax has already been levied, and it costs the taxpayers nothing new. Instead, we are going to have to go to our capital improvement fund, which is how you fund bonds. And that's in our operating budget. And right now we budget every year for reasonable borrowing, which is $350,000 to $450,000. And so we would have to either take that money from another place in our operating budget, or increase taxes to fund that down payment. And the unfortunate reality of that word garbage that I just told you, right, is that I totally understand. And if it weren't much more expensive and directly impactful to the budget, I would agree with you. Sure, let's acquire, and then we'll go do something else. But we know, because as Councilwoman Lambert did point out to us, we are in a significant financial crunch, and that crunch is an operating crunch that putting basically betting whether or not these improvements will be directly open space or coming from our operating budget means that we're gambling with whether or not we will ever do these improvements, because if we can't afford the bond that is required for the down payment, we can't afford the bond, or B, if we do decide to do them, that they won't impact the taxpayers directly this year or next year or whenever you decide that it's appropriate to bond. And so this is the best way for us to move forward to ensure that we can make some improvements on this site. I have agreed with you and heard your concerns about bonding for the full police site, for the full project as I saw it. I agree, fine. But having no budget, no plan for what those improvements are going to be is going to cost the city money. And I don't think having it look cleaner is a good enough argument to incur those costs. Councilman Lambert, I believe you were first, and then Councilman Taylor, I saw you raise your hand. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. I'm going to allow the lawyer to talk and then Councilman Lambert. Go ahead, Matt.
Mayor, thank you. I don't mean to jump in on the other council members, but I heard something that Councilman Stegman said that I thought maybe, I think maybe we can sort of head in the same direction here. The councilman mentioned a couple times, issuing the bond, right? And I think correctly and wisely pointed out that we don't want to issue $1 million, borrow $1 million and just have that money sit there while it's unclear whether we need it all and or on exactly what we're going to spend it all. So I just wanted to take a minute to go through how the plan of finance for this project, I think, would work, right? So if the bond ordinance for $3.7 million roughly is adopted, you are not obligated to issue the full bond all at one time. We clearly need the $2.7 million to close on the property sooner than later, right? You guys know better than I do. Next 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, that money we know we need right away. And so we could go out and borrow the $2.7 million. We do not have to at the same time borrow the additional $1 million. We could borrow a portion of that million if, to the councilman's point, we know we have a site survey to do, or we know we have some sort of civil, engineering work that we want to have done, and that's going to cost, $50,000 towards the information that the council wants and needs. We can borrow that money, but we don't have to go out and borrow all $1 million at once. And we certainly don't have to do it at the same time that we borrow the 2.7 million. So I think, the mayor mentioned earlier, it's a statement to the public, right? The commitment is, we know where we want to spend the money to acquire the property. We recognize there are improvements that need to be done in order to make the property beneficial to the public for their use right away. We may not know whether that's really $200,000 or $1 million. We're committing up to $1 million for it, but we're not going to borrow that money right away. And we're only going to spend the amount we actually need based on the agreements you all come to, based in part on the resolution you just adopted. And so you're not going to be borrowing money and, importantly, paying interest on money that you don't need. You will only borrow that money when you decide this is what we want to do with it and we need it now. And that's when you would start to incur the interest expense on that money. So I think it sort of feels to me, which is why I apologize, I wanted to jump in. It feels to me like you and the mayor are sort of on a similar path of, we want to be committed to something that benefits the public. We just don't know that we want to spend all this money right away. Well, you're not going to borrow and spend all that money right away. This gives you the flexibility to borrow it as you need it, not all at once, whether you need it or not.
Thank you for that explanation. It was really helpful. My concern is that the bond ordinance itself does not have a list of things that, well, the former bond ordinance had a list of things that would allow us to do. But that is no longer the bond ordinance that we are going to be voting on, I assume, right, Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, Councilman, that is, again, the exact point, right? I wholly agree with you that we don't really know exactly what site improvements we need. And so we are allowing ourselves, putting a budget together, allowing one that we know is budget neutral, allowing ourselves the time that it will take to actually create the project plan, and then borrow that money and spend it on the project plan.
Not seeing what I understand what you're saying perfectly. not knowing what my challenge is, or what I'm struggling with is some things that I saw in the other ordinance, which had to do with the city doing what that has to do to use, what's the term? I'm so sorry. Reuse, reuse of.
Adaptive reuse.
Use.
Thank you so much. It's dark where I'm sitting, so my mind is wandering. Yes, to do that and specifically mention city use, and if that is going to be in the, I'm not comfortable with committing to certain things.
Councilman, that was the reason we removed, because of your discomfort with saying use for city use, we removed it from the bond ordinance per your concern.
That is, well, number one, thank you. I think it was it wasn't only my concern. I think it was the concern of many people, to be.
Actually, frankly, Councilman, I only heard it from you. So.
So I would like.
Again, I do just want to say here, like, all kidding aside, you and I strongly disagree with how we should use this site. I do think that this should be widely available for public use. I think that we should invest in making this a place that where we can hold public gatherings, where we can provide public service, that this is an opportunity for us to create a historic town center that keeps the feeling of the rural character of our community. We disagree about that. That's fine. But
I don't disagree with that.
No, Councilman, we do disagree with that. So
No,
that's fine. Excuse me. All I'm saying here is that I have made many concessions, including one of my largest policy goals that I've stated publicly here for more than a year, that I saw, well, I guess not more than a year, for about 5 months, that I saw this.
Seems like a year.
Yeah, sure, certainly does.
Yeah.
That I saw this as an opportunity to answer a serious and significant public policy question that we have in order for us to build affordable housing and to answer the question of where we were putting our police station. It has been the thing that I have cared about and spent the most time on as a mayor. And I heard directly from you and from Councilwoman Lambert that was of significant concern. And I said, that's not worth it to me to potentially lose what is one of the most culturally important pieces of property that we have left in this city. And so I ate it. I gave you my biggest policy proposal and took it out of this budget, out of this bond, including taking out any reference of city use. That was an opportunity. I was hoping that we would see this in Councilwoman Lambert's words as a compromise to get to a place where we are purchasing this property because we know that it's the only way to preserve it. And on top of that, to give us the opportunity to actually invest in that property and make it of some use to the public.
Well, I think we don't disagree. The only thing we disagree on is the extra bond money. And we had a conversation, the mayor and I had a conversation today about this and offered that what she just spoke about to me. And I still have a problem about paying for about the extra bond money right now. And I'm not, just 1 second, I'm not putting my head in the sand knowing that this project will not need work, especially if, depending on how fast and how quickly we open it up to the public. I get that. But I just feel that we shouldn't bond the full money now. That's because whatever we do on that property, I can't predict the future. It's almost $1 million. Is that going to be enough? I have no idea what I know now what we're not doing on the building. We're not renovating the log home.
Well, it's not off the table for me. We're just not doing that in this bond.
Okay, so
I still think it's
just talked about we weren't going to
policy option. But as I understand that you had concerns about it, and I wanted to try and get to a compromise here so that we could move forward to acquire this property.
I thought you said we weren't going to have any city use on that property, unless I misheard.
No, we're not spending the $1 million. This $1 million plus the acquisition cost does not have a specific phrasing for city use. It just says general. I mean, Matt, you can help me with the actual language, but I believe it's general site improvement.
Matt, is that how it reads?
Yeah, it's a little more specific. It's site improvements on the property, including roadway improvements, improvements to the existing barn to ensure public safety, and accessibility, fencing, and landscape improvements. But I think the point was the other iteration had specific reference to additional facilities renovations for city use, and that was intentionally taken out. So this is really the site improvements that you all ultimately decide, again, via, among other things, the resolution you just adopted. You know, what does this site need to make it safe and accessible and available to the public? And again, if that's only $100,000 worth of improvements, that's fantastic. You'll only spend $100,000. You will not bond $1 million. You'll bond $100,000, and the rest will get canceled. If it's more, then you have the ability, without, you know, a 2+ month process of accessing that money to get those improvements to the public, you know, quicker.
And Matt, I'm just going to add on there, without the 2+ months process and an unknowable direct budget impact. The year that we bond, there is depending on how much we would bond separately for those improvements, we don't know that wouldn't increase taxes.
Well, we don't know. Can I just bounce back? I know.
Yes, I know. Council President Taylor's been very patiently waiting here. So, and then I'm sorry, Councilman Lambert first, Taylor second. So it's Councilman, and we do have 172 people on the line here. So, and about 16 people who want to comment. So,
I just want to, when it comes time, I'll just wrap it up.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, well, I'll let Councilwoman Taylor.
It's Councilwoman Lambert next.
Oh.
So, 172 people online. I think that's great. People are going to ask a lot of questions. This takes as long as it takes. And I think we should all have that opportunity to to ask our questions and air the commentary. It's been so long, Steve, Councilman Stegman. I think I may have forgotten my question. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. One of the things about this, I think, Mayor, you made a comment several minutes ago that there's overwhelming support in the community for the project, right?
Yes.
We did not have a referendum. And without a referendum, we cannot definitively know what the public at large thinks. I, for one, have spoken to many people in the community who were completely unaware that there was even a survey on this. And and as a result, I think we missed an opportunity by not mailing a survey to every household. We missed an opportunity to really gauge what people think. A referendum would be even more preferable because there's legal process that you have to follow, and people understand what that is, and they make a conscious decision to not participate. So whereas I understand that a survey was sent out and many people responded, there are large sections of the community that didn't even know it was going on.
So, Councilman, that's such an interesting point. I do think, and I want to recall back to the meeting that we had here and really think about those survey results. Are you suggesting that you spoke to more than 300 people who wanted to respond to that survey and didn't?
It doesn't matter how many people I spoke to.
Well,
because
frankly, it does. We had 11% of the population. We had 11% of the population.
You don't want the answer to my question. It doesn't matter. I know people in my neighborhood. Okay, there are not 300 people in my neighborhood, but how many people besides the 100 or 150 in my neighborhood didn't know about it? I went down on South Union Street and spoke to a few people. They had no idea. People living up on Music Mountain, no idea. You know what? There's like 2,200 registered voters, right? In the community. We didn't get anywhere near 2,200 responses. And you know what? Maybe we would have only gotten 500 or 488. That's not the point. The point is they weren't notified and they didn't have the opportunity to choose not to participate. That's my point.
Okay, I think you and I would just have to respectfully
Agree to disagree.
about the-
Okay, I'm good with that.
all I want to say here is that I do want to take a moment to again thank the community advisory team. You know, almost 500 survey responses is a pretty good and with, you know, a very skewed response rate, right? That we know 75% those respondents it was important to very important for the city to acquire the property. 90% of the respondents said that it was important for the city to preserve that property. So, you know, while I understand that it was not as deep of a dive as you wanted, you know, the point of why I was asking that was because there would have to be a significant number of people that didn't know about the survey to skew how significant those results were. It was not close.
You know, let's be clear. I am not disparaging the CAT efforts in any respect. That is not the intent of my comment. They did not make the decision to forego a referendum. Okay, they were working within the parameters that they were given. That's my point.
Councilwoman,
And I think it was,
that, but unfortunately, the decision to not have a referendum was only based on the timing of the negotiated contract. We negotiated as much time as was possible with as little down payment as possible in order to make this project work. Again, 6 months of due diligence on a property acquisition is not usual. It has put a strain on the current owners, and they have agreed to this because they agree with us that the preservation of this property is the best possible result. And so if we had demanded a referendum, we could only do that referendum. There are specific timing rules based on when a referendum is allowed to be levied, or levy is not the right word, but opposed to the community. And it did not seem possible at the time to host a referendum to hear from the community. So the council that was here when we negotiated the terms of our agreement chose to move forward with, and we are not taking the survey results, and I want to be clear about this, I'm not taking the survey results as the same as a referendum. It is just a good piece of data in a lot of other pieces of data that we have.
I think it's, well, I'm disappointed that we put the outcome of this transaction ahead of the interests of the voting population. Let's just leave it at that.
We could not have acquired this property if we demanded a referendum. And I think that the most important thing was to give the public time to consider the facts, which we have done, to do our due diligence to ensure that this was a property that was worthwhile investing in, which we have done. And then it's up to the governing body, unfortunately, to make the decision. And that's why they elected us, to make the difficult decisions about how we spend our money and what our priorities are. And I think that we share a lot of those priorities: historic preservation, stopping overdevelopment, doing such in a way that that is budget neutral. I think there's places where our goals align there, but unfortunately, it was not possible for us to do a referendum. And the question was, it's more important to hear from the voters than to preserve the property, there I disagree with you. Council President Taylor.
Interesting.
Thank you. Just a reminder to all of us to please, we need to lower our hands if we're going to raise them. Otherwise, it's hard to tell what order we're in. I will be brief and to the point, just to share with the public my opinion on this. I think we actually have a really interesting opportunity that things have come together in a way that we couldn't have predicted. Councilman Stegman, can you put your hand down? I'm sorry to call you out. I just
Oh.
want to make sure we,
Oh, no, 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 I'm so sorry.
yeah, thank you.
I will. Wait a minute, I gotta figure out how to do it.
I know you'd think it would know, it would just hear, but it doesn't.
Oh, there it is. Sorry,
That's
Council.
okay. I have had concerns consistently over the past 2 years about some of our decision-making processes, feeling that they've been too accelerated, that it always felt like there was something we had to do or else. And I felt like there were times I made decisions really wanting to make sure I was not screwing things up for everybody else. Maybe my concerns weren't as valid. But I'm actually pretty happy where we have landed right now, because things have come together in such a way that we can both preserve a really important property and think through some things that people have been asking us to think through, that I personally really have wanted to see us think through, and make some really careful decisions. So here's my opinions, just so everybody's very clear where I stand. I want us to acquire this property and preserve it. I think that's really important. I would rather be voting on a bigger bond, because I understand, as Mr. Jessup has said, that bonding is not the same as spending, that there's a time horizon related to it. There's also a cost to it. Bonding later means we will potentially and likely have to spend operating cost to make the bond possible. That's not the case right now. So I am disappointed that we are voting on a smaller bond, to be perfectly frank. I am happy, however, that we have opportunity over the next few months to develop a full project plan, really understand how we're going to use this entire site, manage the buildings, whether that's on our own or with partners, and I certainly hope it'll be with partners. The future of the police site is uncertain at the moment, so we have opportunity to rethink that carefully and see how these properties will play together. And really importantly, we have opportunity to do a full facilities review, to take into account the condition and use of all of our buildings, make decisions for the future of the Clausen site, so that it is to the benefit of all of our operations. So I think that's all I have to say. I think we should move ahead. I think we should vote on this bond and vote positively. And I think we should actually be voting on a bigger bond. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm
Council President. Yeah, Councilwoman Lambert, please.
I do have one more question. Thank you. This afternoon,
Council President Taylor's statement, or?
No, a different question.
Okay.
Can I move on? Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. So this afternoon, council received an email from Jim Ammon about a strategy for acquiring this property, where I'm paraphrasing, but basically it sounds like he's saying this properties, like acquisitions of this nature, are typically done through consortium of, DNR Greenway Trust, county, and the municipality. We're not doing that. He sounded surprised that we were not taking that route.
Yeah, so again, we've discussed this publicly on multiple occasions, that normally in major acquisitions like this, those types of consortiums, if I can use your word, are negotiated over really significant periods of time, right? That there are properties that are either semi-public or privately owned that never go up on the market. The cities or municipalities go to those owners and say, "Hey, we want to preserve your property. We're going to run out for about a year, get open space money from the state. We're going to work with preservation organizations like the New Jersey, I'm blanking on their name right now, the New Jersey Conservation team, and we're going to come back to you with an offer. And at that point, we'll either condemn, if you agree, we'll go into a friendly condemnation, condemn your property, put together the bonds, blah, blah, blah. Or if this is unfriendly, but we feel like this property is worthwhile anyway, we'll condemn it for real. and do an unfriendly condemnation, take over the property, and you'll get what you get. That's normally how these types of big preservation projects are done. And in that case, you secure all your funding up front, because you got miles of road and you can sit in, endless meetings at DEP to, navigate that whole mess. We did not have that opportunity. I actually learned that the Clausen site was going up on the market from an NJ.com article. That was my first, that was the first time that I had heard that. Potentially, it was, the city could have gone to the Clausens years ago and structured one of those deals. We didn't do that. I was unaware. I didn't really realize how quickly and seriously, and that the Clausens were looking to retire and to leave this property, and that they were putting it up on the open market. So that changed the calculus for myself and members of the council, because we were fighting in the open market rather than being able to basically negotiate exclusivity on somebody who wasn't selling. We were competing with private developers who were interested in that site for overdevelopment. And so the most important, we had goals that we had to hit, and we had to hit them quickly, which is we wanted a low down payment. We wanted as much running time as possible to have these conversations in public. And then we also wanted to have exclusivity on the site during that time. And we were able to negotiate all three of those things: super low down payment, long run due diligence period, and ultimately exclusivity on the site. And that was really important to us. Now, we've been working with conservationists. We have had these preliminary discussions with the state. They understand that this is a property that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Unique, and that the sale of that property was unique. And I feel very confidently that we are going to be able to structure some amount of payback from Green Acres and the county, or potential other revenue sources. But it was really important to me to prove to the council and to the public that even if we didn't do that, if we received no revenue back, which I think is a very low likelihood, almost impossible, I think we will have revenue from preserving this site. But even if we don't, we know that it was budget neutral. And we've done all of those things because of the amount of due diligence period that we've had. So Jim Amon is absolutely right. And he's been working in preservation for a long time. I also received his email, but it just wasn't possible due to the short time period we had to negotiate and get exclusivity on the site. Councilman Stegman?
First, I'd like to thank Council President Taylor for all of her assistance and input over this process, because it was quite helpful, and I know, like the mayor has as well, put a lot of time and effort into having this happen. My concern is that we will do improvements to this property with the $1 million that may affect how we will be treating this property going forward. I'm concerned about making improvements, not knowing what they are, which is really difficult at this juncture, that will either push us in one direction or the other. And that's my hesitancy. And Council President Taylor's comment about, we should look for more money, that's either good or bad or indifferent, because I'm not making that, that calculation. What I am concerned about is what not knowing specifically what is going to be done on the site concerns me about how we'll be able to use this property in the future. So I think it would help me if well, number one, it would help me if we didn't do the extra bond. But that said, I would like to know the scope of what the extra bond money and plans to be used for. You had mentioned the barn. Does this mean that we're going to move forward on the barn to turn it into the meeting space?
Councilman Stegman, I'll allow Council President to answer this too, but we have already answered this question. We are not going to spend any of this bond outside of acquisition until we have a full site plan. And if Mr. Jessup wouldn't mind rereading what the bond specifically says we'll be spending that money on, I think that both of these things have been clarified on both verbally by me and also by the act of resolving that to do exactly what we just said we wouldn't do, right? We have all resolved with unanimity that we will not spend money on improvements on this site until we have a project plan. Council President?
Well, that's basically what I was going to say. And just, I think the conversation about the resolution got a little off track about voting procedure, which actually has nothing to do with what was in the resolution. The resolution is simply to say that we as a body, and I can't stress enough that I personally push for the resolution because I do not want to spend any money until we have a complete plan, which includes us having completed our facilities review so we can think about our properties holistically. To me, that is what we approved by resolution at the beginning of this meeting.
I do want to note here, Councilman Sanders, if you have any questions or comments. Otherwise, I think we've had a relatively robust conversation here and we should move towards hearing from the public.
But thank you, Council President Taylor.
Yeah, this is Ward, and I apologize. I'm in the middle of a healthcare encounter, and there's 157 people. I'm listening to every word, but I just, as Councilwoman Taylor or Council President Taylor just did, I do want to just express my support for the purchase of the property. I read everyone's emails, talked to a lot of folks. I did not read the emails today. I just didn't have time. And agree that I support the purchase or the bonding for money in excess of the purchase price with absolute clarity that I'm not going to vote for anything to spend a dime until there's a site plan and that folks, we vote to approve that. Because of less for the time involved, I mean, it probably takes whatever 2.5 months to get the funding in a separate bond, but for the, as I understand it, the cost of multiple or a second or multiple bonds, we don't have to spend it. We can bond for it. We do not have to spend it. And I'm not going to spend or vote to spend money absent a site plan. I do think just to be, I do think there's going to be a spirited debate as to what happens with this property and how we use it and what that site plan looks like. But I do think that there's a fair amount of support there, a lot of support in this community for the purchase of this. And I hope that we can reach an accommodation so that we don't miss this opportunity because it is a rare opportunity. So anyway, I actually have to sign off. I'm going to listen in, but I have to stop talking right now.
All right, thank you, Councilman. At this point, I'm going to ask that we open up to the public. Cindy, I'm co-hosting here. Would you like me to move folks in so that you can take diligent notes?
If you don't mind, Mayor, that would really be helpful.
Not at all. We had Tina, unfortunately, is on vacation, so Hopefully I have the same juice as Tina does and we can move this along quickly. I'm going to remind people of some rules here before we move to the public comment. Everybody has 3 minutes. I'd ask that you not repeat general statements that other folks have made, so that we can be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to ask Council President Taylor, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, to just sort of give me a flag at 2.5 or 3 minutes so that we can continue to move folks along. We've got 174 people on the line right now. We've got 28 hands. So I think if we can do this expeditiously, but also to make sure that everybody gets heard, we can, I think that would be great. So with that, this is also a quick reminder, you have to state your name and your address at the beginning of your comment, and we'll interrupt you if you don't do that. So first up is MJ Legere. MJ, will you give us your name and your street address? You got to unmute, MJ.
Wait a minute. Okay, there I am. Okay. Yes, Mary Jane Legere here, 103 North Union Street. I first want to join with the legions of grateful voices in thanking the Clausens for patiently and generously working with the city to preserve the property that their family has so lovingly cared for and shared with us over the years, and for all the work that you and the council have done on this. I want to say, please do not risk this opportunity for the preservation of the entire property. We have 3 votes, 3 voting residents, I should say, here in our home, and we knew it was going to be a long meeting, so I am the representative. We support this ordinance. Art, Chris, and I ask you to move forward and to get this done tonight. Please vote yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, MJ. So I'm going to move on to the next, which is Eric Silverman. Eric, would you state your name and your address?
Sure thing. Thank you very much. Eric Silverman, 26 Buttonwood Street. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm pretty sure I speak on behalf of many of the residents on the call, obviously some not. But I guess there's 5 statements I can make in 2 minutes or less. Historical preservation is front and center for many of us that live in town. A lot of us value the historical preservation that we each put into our own homes, as well as open space and no more building in town. So from where I sit, this is 100% win from the town's perspective. I also might simply look at this differently when we talk about debt. Obviously, debt is a big concern for the town. However, one of the things we really should consider is, are we taking on more debt, or are we actually taking on more assets? Because quite frankly, the property value doesn't exactly go down in this town. I've been here for 15 years, and one of the best choices I've ever made is to buy a property in this town. So to buy a property, quite frankly, for that price, let's just say it's $2.5 million. How much does a single home not attached on either side cost in town today? It's quite a lot. So I don't see the value of this property going down. I consider it more of an asset. And the taxes, everybody talks about the taxes all the time. The taxes across the state of New Jersey are high. They're one of the highest in the country. I think I actually just read an article that said it might be the highest in the country. So we have to stop arguing about taxes and taxes going up because we're going to make an acquisition of a property that might just increase the value of our assets on the actual financial books, the ledger itself. So I personally think we need to stop talking about how this might raise taxes a little bit. It's expensive in the state, period. We're making the decision to live here. We're also making the decision to stay here. We could easily pick up and move right across the river to Pennsylvania and pay much less taxes. And it's a state issue, not a town issue. Number one, it's time to start thinking about, like I said, these properties as assets. I see no harm in adding more assets to our ledger. The properties, again, I'd like to finish on this statement. simply go up in value. If we ever found ourselves in a problem financially, we could easily sell this property off and choose who we sell it to by essentially paying down some of our debt. So I see this as all around a home run. And that's it.
Thank you so much for your comment, Eric. I'm going to move on to the next. Suzanne, can you state your name and your address?
Hi, this is Suzanne Jatomer. I live at 73 Clinton Street here in town. I just wanted to continue to voice my support for this project for all the reasons stated. It's good that we're having this discussion. It's good to hear from Councilman Stegman and Councilwoman Lambert. We've talked about this a long time and it's been unclear where you stand. So I'm glad you've put yourself out there. I just wanted to say, this is the next great project. This is, as people have said, the project of a generation. I think that given that it is a private sale, we were not cavalier about it. I think we were very diligent about it as quickly as we could be. I think that referendums are all well and good, but they do take a very long time. I also think that having bond referendum after bond referendum after bond referendum, once we figure out what we have to do, is counterproductive and won't work. I think we have to do this. I do believe there's 2 council members who are really want to not do this and are looking for reasons why. And I think that the reasons are clear, that it's an historic property, that we have to preserve it. If we don't, our costs will be so much higher in the community having to come up to pool their money, to pay for lawyers, to fight lawsuits because developers are doing this and that to the property. People complaining of why is this condominium going in? Why are all these kids coming into the school that we hadn't planned on? Frankly, it's a Megillah, and it is a no-brainer that we should purchase this property now. And I want to thank all of you for your thoughts and comments, and the cat for all its hard work. And thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Larry Imhoff. Larry, will you speak? Will you give us your first and last name and your address?
Larry Imhoff, 5 Liberty View Court. I have several questions, actually. Number one, I suppose I missed it. There was a question about the appraisal value versus the purchase dollars. That's probably been settled, Mayor Fall, but could you speak to that just real briefly?
Certainly. We have a budget to do appraisals for the ultimate preservation portion of the project, which requires two appraisals. The council at the time chose not to get an appraisal of the purchase price and instead to negotiate a purchase price agreement, which is what we did. We negotiated from the listed 2.9 down to 2.81. We did that for a variety of reasons, including our concern that there were no direct comps or comparisons, that this property was unique in and of itself, and that also, we wanted to get to an agreement in order for us to be able to actually purchase the property. So we made that decision, and once the price was agreed on, there was some conversation, but never a conclusion on whether or not there was value to add from having an appraisal done on the property when it wouldn't change the price of the property.
Okay, thanks. Because there was a significant difference, like about $1 million or so.
We've never appraised the property.
I thought it had a tax appraised value.
That's not an appraisal. We had the tax.
I understand.
Oh, okay. we had the tax assessor review the site for its value. And I'm not sure that that's directly publicly available right now. Bill, can you speak to that?
That was a memo to the council. It's a deliberative document. The city hasn't moved forward with purchasing the property, so we haven't made that available yet. It's not available under the Open Public Records Act. Depending on how this goes forward, it eventually would be, but right now it's considered deliberative materials.
Okay. Well, I don't want to waste my 3 minutes here, and I assume your time cuts against my time. I would say in conjunction with Councilwoman Lambert that when I tried to call in on the CAT, I got a broken Zoom link in the email. I couldn't get in on that. It just said it was broken. I got a telephone. I went back and found a telephone number to call in. That was a listen only telephone number. So I'm with Councilman Lambert in that I wonder how many people didn't get to speak about this, since the survey by the CAT got responses from what, maybe 10% of the people. But I'll leave that as a comment. I think the survey was non-responsive. Question, Mayor Falk, can this property ever be sold once the city buys it? There's a lot of concern that this will just turn around in a few years and it'll go to a developer anyway.
So if we move towards preservation, which is my strong preference, we would work with the Green Acres program as well as with the county preservation programs. That's what we were talking about earlier. I'm sorry, Council President.
My hand is up.
Oh, sorry.
So, well, mine was too, just letting you know that that's time. But
Okay.
I think there are 32 people in line. So probably what we need to do is have everyone make their statements or ask their questions. If there are brief responses from the mayor, then let's do that. But I'd rather just get people's 3 minutes of public comment through rather than a back and forth if we can, or we will be here until 2 a.m.
Fair's fair. The answer, Larry, is that once something is in the Green Acres program, it can't be sold for development unless there is a property that is either you have to divert that property. So you have to go find 4 new acres for every 1 acre that you're trying to sell. So the whole goal with these programs is so that they don't get resold and they stay as public open space in perpetuity. That's what we're trying to get to.
I apologize to President Taylor about my timing, but does that mean that we couldn't develop a police station then if it was Green Acres?
I'm sorry, time is up, Mayor.
No. And I'll answer that more fully at the end. Okay. Moving to Judy Gleason, will you state your name and your address?
This is Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I have concern about the most basic part of this, which is the acquisition and the cost of the acquisition. I don't know of any indication that we have any progress. Maybe we do, but I don't know that we do in terms of the Hunterdon Land Trust or the New Jersey Conservation Foundation or any of the ways, the Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee in Hunterdon County that you have to talk to, which we had not talked to as of the December presentation that the city gave to the freeholders. So I'm concerned that we sort of, well, let me just end by pointing to the comment of, or the representation that this is budget neutral or revenue neutral or whatever that is. You don't wind up spending $2.9 million plus whatever else and have no impact on anybody when in the early days we were told that these conservation avenues would be how this would be partially funded. We haven't done that, and I'm sorry, but there's people who've lived in this town forever. Councilwoman Lambert, I think, made incredibly important points about the lack of input from a lot of people in this town who didn't just move here. I mean, I moved here 20 years ago, and I'm aware of how much it costs to live here and how much more it costs now than it did 4 years ago. I'm worried about driving out the people who have been here with their families forever because we aren't paying attention. And when we look at some of our facilities review, which we haven't got yet, which I am waiting for, as is everyone, we have a lot ahead of us. As I said the last time, we've spent 4 years or 3 years hearing about how the previous administration was in debt too much. And now we just say, yeah, well, we changed our mind. So, hey, here we are in debt. So I have great concern that we are not being responsible in how we're pursuing our priorities as a city. And if at a minimum, it seems as though we should have aggressively be further down the line in terms of getting funding or support or participation from other organizations, 501c3s, whoever they are, governments, the state, to participate in this. So I'm disappointed that this is an approach that is another hurry up and we don't have time to do it right. So that's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Judy. Next, we have Sarah Scully.
Hi, Sarah Scully, 97 South Franklin Street. I support the project and the idea of preserving the property, particularly the track you're taking with really saying we're going to have a project plan before we do anything. I think that's a great idea. I did want to ask a question, and that is there any way that the property, because it's on a slope, can be protected under either the existing steep slope ordinance or some kind of ordinance that would protect the land and the property because it is on such a steep slope, and in relationship to like the hill it's sort of connected to?
I may lean on Council President Taylor for this, but I do believe that we worked with our city planner to get an estimate of what the as of right development would be on that site, with some respect to the steep slope. But you know, the best way to preserve that site is to buy it and put it into green acres, and that preserves it for 2,000 years.
Yeah, it will not be able to be quote unquote protected by zoning. So preservation is the best protection avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving to the next, we have Sue Bell. Can you state your name and address?
I'm sorry, Mayor. Is Councilman Stegman, are you trying to say something?
No, and my darn hand keeps on going. I don't
Okay.
know what. Sorry, but thank you for asking. No, I'm not touching anything here, but thanks. No, go right ahead.
Sue, if you can unmute yourself.
Sure. I'm Sue Bell. I live at 407 Surgeon Drive. I wanted to make a comment and then I had a couple questions. To the gentleman who called and said that we can just move to New Hope, that's just rude. Okay, nobody feels that way in this town. This is a town that really cares about their community. And they do worry. We are an aging community and rising taxes does concern people. And we all know that. People talk about it all the time. I guess what I'm a little bit confused about tonight is we talk a lot about preservation of a pristine property. I drive by it, I live by it. It's an absolutely pristine property. But I'm a little bit concerned with the use of the project. It sounds like a mixed commercial use that you're going to take and have several commercial properties on there, even if the city owns them, the barn being an event space, and keeping the market open, maybe doing some other things there. That does concern me with noise and lights. And if you're bringing on more food, the possibility of coyotes and brown bear coming into town. We've had some of those issues in our neighborhood. So I want to point that out. I don't understand. And I am concerned about the noise factor and the lighting it up more. We hear the New Hope train all day long. So I just want people to think about that. I'm not the decider for that, but I don't really, it doesn't really sound like preservation. So, and then the other final comment that I wanted to make, and I would like you to comment about that, but my final comment is about the referendum. Referendum is a democracy. It's let the voters vote. Last spring, the voters voted to pay firemen, okay? It doesn't take long. It didn't take them long to put it on the ballot. It's not a crazy unheard of thing. And it's certainly a better tallying of an 11% return on an online only survey. And I know that you feel that that was the best way to do it, but it's really not statistically significant. So if you could explain to me what the difference with mixed use commercial property and preservation is, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, I really appreciate that because I live behind this property.
So the short answer, and I can do this longer at the end if this continues to come up, is that we actually produced a map for the public that would sort of that would take a small portion of the property, a little over 1.5 acres, where there are already existing outbuildings like the log cabin, the Holcomb House, and the farm market, and we put those in an exception zone. And everything else outside of that, which I think is like 6 some odd acres, I apologize for the numbers, would be put into a preservation. So the goal here is to not do a ton of, my public stated goal is to keep the historic view shed as it stands now. Some of that is going to be difficult with any municipal use. And so, there will be changes that I think will be necessary for the project to move forward, but those will all be discussed as we start to have those public site plan and project plan. So the noise, the use, all of that can be decided after we decide whether or not we want to acquire and fund the project.
I also want to say, because I don't know that a lot of people actually see the property, a lot of it is like ditches and ditches, like it's ravines, like you can't put a property there. And
I'm sorry, Mayor, we're at our 3 minutes.
Thank you, Julia.
Okay. Moving on, we have Madeline Urbish. Can you state your name and address?
Hi, this is Madeline Urbish at 57 Perry Street. Thank you. This is really exciting to see. I just want to express my very strong support for purchasing and preserving this property and the ordinance you're introducing tonight. I really think that this is a once in a generation opportunity. This is a unique and historically and community and societally important property in this town. And it really, from a personal perspective, gives me great joy to think, our son will have access to that property as he grows up, just like many kids before him have had that access. And so I just want to provide my full-throated support. And then the final comment is just, I've heard a number of people tonight and in past meetings kind of make generalizations about who lives in Lambertville, whether it's their age or how long, and then what it is they care about. And I think I would caution folks to make assumptions, against making assumptions about who lives here and what's important to them, because we really are a diverse community with diverse opinions, and some folks are comfortable sharing in this venue, some are not, and prefer sort of online surveys or sending an email or making a call or just talking to one another. So I think we should all just give each other the benefit of the doubt and respect that we all deserve. So thank you all for what you're doing, and that's it.
Thanks for your comment. I have Shara Durkee. If you could say your name and address.
Hi, I'm Shara Durkee. I live at 53 Delaware Avenue. And I want to express my wholehearted support for this project. And my understanding is the property is for sale now. We don't have time to wait on this. And that if we don't move on it and buy it, that a developer will. And to me, and I am really supportive of the extra money in the bond too, because obviously we are going to have to spend money as we work on this. And as I've been thinking about it, I think of the homestead market and the whole property. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's spacious. You drive into town, there it is, it's gorgeous. My kids sled on the hill, especially during the pandemic. They'd be sledding for like 5 straight hours. And I would hate to give that up. And I also was fortunate enough to work at the homestead for a while. And really, when I think about Lambertville and our community and the way that we support each other, I think the Clausens and the homestead embody that more than anybody. They've been so generous. letting us use the sledding hill. You know, they've given us the park near the school. They are so incredibly generous. People would come into the market and, you know, especially Debbie and Ed, who were so busy, would stop and talk to everybody. It was friendly. People helped each other out. They'd say, hey, do you want me to deliver something to your house? People came in from the outside and just said, hey, I was driving by. This was so beautiful. I wanted to check it out. And it just breaks my heart to think that we would lose this. And my understanding from what I'm hearing is whatever that extra money that we're bonding, there's nothing in particular we have to do with it yet. We have plenty of time to figure that out. We don't have to spend it all, but we do need that money sitting there so that we have opportunities. So again, I mean, to me, that property, that space, that the history, the family that has lived there and been so wonderful to all of us, if we lose that, and again, we don't have time to mess around, it would be absolutely devastating for our town. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mayor, would you like me to share my screen so people can see the timer as they're speaking?
Yeah, hold on. Let me put you in as a suggested host. Hold on here. Give me 1 second. You know what? Unfortunately, we can't do that because there can only be a host and a co-host. Well, Cindy, do you need to host actually?
I don't. I'm just looking. Yeah, but she should be able to share her screen. But let me make her. I'm going to make her a co-host.
Council President, can you try sharing your screen?
Yeah, it doesn't work. It says it's disabled in the meeting settings.
Okay.
While we're working on that, I'm going to keep moving on here. We have Deborah Mercer. Can you state your name and your address?
Deborah Mercer, 51 Perry Street, Greg Pontier also. I'd like to, of course, thank the Clossons and all of you on City Council and Mayor for your attention to this project. And we strongly urge you to pass this bond to preserve this pastoral historic property. We feel it's of financial and historic importance, a once in a lifetime opportunity. And thank you for moving forward with this.
What she said.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to ask you to give us your name and your address as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Deborah Mercer, 51 Perry Street.
And your partner?
Greg Pontier, 51 Perry Street.
All right, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. Oh,
right. Can you see it?
Yeah, I got it. I got there. I got a little nervous there for a second. Okay, Matt
That's
Larkin,
a big clock.
you can unmute yourself and state your name and your address.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Larkin. I live at 406 Sergeant Drive. First, I definitely want to thank the mayor and the council for all your time and effort on this. I know it's kind of a fast pace because the Clausens want to liquidate their property. So I appreciate all the work that went into it, and also for the CAT team for their canvassing of the city. I speak that I fully support the acquisition. I also fully support bonding for the additional $1 million. Number one, because there will be something that we want to do to transform it from what the Clausens use it for to something that would be more amenable to a city with diverse needs. And I love the idea that we're going to bond once and not spend extra bonding money. I'm really appreciative of your effort there. I do want to make one point. There's been discussion about a referendum versus a survey. So in my work, I am a testing engineer, so I do a fair amount of data analysis and I have some awareness of statistics. You essentially sampled 448 people. Your voting population is approximately 2,200 people based on what I heard tonight. So you've sampled 20% of your population. That's a huge sample. With a 75 to 90% approval rate out of the 20%, you could easily consider that you could call this, if you were whoever, CNN, they'd probably say, we're going to call this for an approval. So I want to, give the council that as you wonder, what are people thinking? It was a huge sample of the population. So that was a well done survey. Not everyone participated for whatever reason or couldn't participate, and that is unfortunate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I have a Susan. If you could state your name and your address.
Yes, my name is Susan Ravello, and I live at 8 Hillside Court. And I really want to thank the mayor and the council for all of the hard work that you've put into this, and all of the really good discussions you've had to make sure that all of the information, that we need to know has been presented. I have lived in Lambertville for 40 years, and I am a Lambertvillian, and my taxes have gone to pay for things that I have not personally benefited from. For example, I don't have children, but I have always been happy to have a town that has a lot of spaces and places for kids and for families and for people to be. And what I'd like to say is that I'm so in favor of preserving this property. And of course, having lived here for 40 years, I know a lot of people. And there isn't anyone that I speak with who isn't totally in favor of it. And Steve, I just want to say how grateful I am to you for spearheading the preservation of the Acme building. I know that we had to bond, in order to fix that property. But I was heartbroken at the idea that, that property wasn't going to be preserved. And I know that you spearheaded that. And I just want to express my gratitude to you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was, and I know you care about preservation. The other thing that I also feel concerned about, my being able to afford to live in Lambertville. But the thing is that the way the information is presented, and I'm certainly not a math person, but the way the information's been presented sounds to me like this is really a very fiscally responsible way to go about acquiring this property. And I think this property is a gem. I think it's a total Lambertville, icon institution. I would be heartbroken to drive past it and see, a bunch of McMansions. And I think the Clausen family has, and having that farm stand there has been such an incredible, wonderful thing for the community. So I know I've talked a lot and my time is running out, so I'll stop there.
All right, thank you for your comment, Susan. Carol?
Hi, this is Carol James, 64 Elm Street. I just wanted to say that I'm in full support of the purchase of this property. I can't imagine this falling into the hands of anyone else, especially a developer who would be adding more homes, which is not something this town needs. What we need is green space, and this project could give us that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have Karen Conlon. Can you state your name and your address?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, my name is Karen, and I'll be less than 3 minutes. My name's Karen Conlon. I live at 136 North Union, and I am a member of the CAT. And number one, this has been a long meeting, but a great meeting. And I really appreciate, like everybody else, I know what the council members are going through. I know what they're dealing with, and thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Councilperson Taylor and Councilperson Sanders in regards to bonding for the larger amount. I'm a big proponent of preserving any and all remaining open space in this town. And right now we have very limited opportunities to do so. And as a CAT member, I was on the committee that actually read the comments that people wrote. And the public comments that people wrote were basically, we could put them in two buckets. Number one, preserve the space, and number two, let's maintain the market. So I feel very comfortable that this is what most of the people in the city want. I think that the mayor has made a really good, compelling, and data-driven case on why we should make this acquisition. And I understand it is a change of course with her, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's a way for us to control our destiny. Once this property is sold to a developer, we lose control. And I think that an important point is the Clausens are private citizens, and they have the right to sell this to whoever they like. And we should applaud them because their first priority is to preserve this amazing, amazing piece of property in town. You know, if it is developed and we do sell it to a developer and council doesn't vote to support this, there's still going to be costs to us because the police are going to have to work with the housing, the fire, the public works, sewer, water, and school. And we're all going to wind up paying for that. I know that, you know, we recently elected 2 council members. I know they ran on the platform to stop overdevelopment. And I know this is a tough decision, but I hope that they will vote to make this happen. And I think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I would hate to see it slip through our hands. That's it.
Thank you, Karen. Lou Tobos, you're up next.
Hi, Lou Tobus, 42 Coriel Street. I've lived in town for 41 years, so I kind of know what's been going on in town. A lot of things I was going to say have already been said, so I will not repeat those. But as the city historian, I just have to repeat what we said at a meeting or two ago, is that this property, this house, is probably not the most significant property in the county, not even the state. It's probably one of the most important properties in the country when you think about it. George Washington, Hamilton have been there. They planned the battles of Trenton, Monmouth. It's been in this family for 8 generations. Councilman Stegman is probably familiar that we had something called Deed Day, I think about 20 years ago, where we actually saw the document granted to the family in 1704.
Yep.
People stared at this in amazement. It was 70 years older than the Declaration of Independence.
Yep.
If this property, people were talking about City Hall, they're talking about the library. If nothing was done with those properties for 5 years, they will still be there. If nothing is done with this property in 3 months, it will be gone and gone forever. And it would be a great loss to this town. The other thing people were talking about, people not knowing what was going on. If you live in Lambertville and you go for a walk, by the time I finish walking my dog, I've heard the latest news in town. Everybody knew what was going on with this property. So if it was an issue for them, they would have called Steve. They would have called Benedetta. They would have called Julia. They would have called Julia. They would have called everybody on the council. So I think people have expressed themselves. And obviously, I am in total support of this. I am in total support of the extra money to do something with the property. And I guess that's about it for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Richard Green is next. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Green. I've asked you to unmute.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
There you go.
We can.
Okay.
Can see you too.
Thank you for being patient. My name is Richard Green and I live at 35 Lambert Lane. You know, I do have some reservations about the purchase of the property and the issuing of bonds. And I'd like to start off by saying that I'm an advocate for preservation and open space. And equally, I believe that all voices in town must be heard and considered equally in this public decision-making. As such, I believe there must be a public referendum before the city moves forward. While I understand that there was a survey, I am not confident that the survey represents the sentiment of the overall Lambertville population. Without knowing who responded to the survey from a demographic standpoint, we do not know whether the results are skewed. And when you do survey research, you would take that respondent population, compare it to the census of the city, and then weight the respondents to get an overall kind of result. And I don't believe that was done in this survey. I also believe that the almost $3 million price for the property could be wildly inflated. And I don't know whether this is true, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe the property is comprised of 2 equally sized parcels, one of which was recently purchased by the Clausens from a family member several years ago. I believe that purchase was for approximately $700,000, which would make the value of this purchase almost 3 million, about $1 million more or so, not reflecting what the true market value is. So without a property condition analysis and a property appraisal, I think purchasing the property as is taking on too much exposure for the city with respect to future costs and needed maintenance and improvements. So I urge caution and prudence. I'd say that maybe the decision-making process needs to be slowed down. There's this sense of urgency and a burning platform that I keep hearing, that there's people, knocking the door with offers in hand. I don't know whether that's true. I'm not close enough to the situation, but I'd ask the council to be a little bit more reflective and maybe a little bit more just deliberative in terms of how it votes this evening. Thank you very much.
I just want to clarify one thing really quickly. First of all, this is just one parcel of land. And second of all, several different analyses were done on this property to recommend engineering improvements and to see if there was any remediation costs. This council had approved $120,000, I think it's $127,000 of potential studies that we have done over the course of the last 4 months. This council has been working diligently to ensure that we really did understand the site condition of this site. Okay. I have somebody who's listed as Capital Health. Can you state your name and your address?
Yes, sorry about that. That's my work account. We had a big program this week. My name is Marcia Rudolph, and I live at 56 Delavan Street. And I've lived here proudly for 25 years. I'm a real rah-rah for the town. I don't get out quite as much as I would like and meet people, so I have to work on that. But I just wanted to say that I wanted to strongly support the preservation, like most people have said, of the Clausen property. I feel it's a very special spot, the history and the historic preservation. And so just a few things. I'm vehemently opposed to more development in Lambertville, and I'm worried about big development coming in. The way real estate goes here, I think it probably would be very quick for a developer to come in and want to buy the property. And that would totally destroy the charm and the character of the town that makes it so special. So I just wanted to say that I support the acquisition and I wanted to move forward. And I urge the council members to vote yes tonight.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. I have Jack Ludwig. Jack, can you state your name and your address?
Jack Ludwig, 27 Jefferson Street here in Lambertville. Thank you, Mayor. I want to take a little bit of a can you hear me now?
Yes.
I want to take a little bit of a different approach if I could. I am watching the clock. I want to commend the council and the mayor on the due diligence that was done to get us to the point where we are now. I think very adequate time was provided to the public to understand the tax ramifications of this, of which are very small. And also the transparency with which the council and the mayor have operated, as well as our additional advisors and our city attorney. So thank you very much for taking the time necessary to do the job correctly, professionally, and thoroughly. I think the public should take a lot of solace in knowing that this job so far has been done very correctly. I also, in response to the comments about the CAT survey, the CAT team works tirelessly for the benefit of the entire community. Given the fact that 75 to 90% of the respondents, and as one of our neighbors said, that's a very, very good sample size. My assertion is that if there were more responses, that slope would continue and there would be more support for this great project. So that's another point I'd like to make. Third point I'd like to make is clearly the city and the council are the best custodians long-term for this property. Real estate developers are in business to make money. They can build anything, anywhere, and they will. We should not be naive to think that developers, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or 2 years, will descend upon Lambertville and buy that property and put up whatever the heck they want to make money. That's what they do. They don't care about the community. We care about the community. So with that, I urge the council to approve this and approve the additional money for improvements, because I, as a citizen of Lambertville, do not want bond issuance after bond issuance. I think the $900,000 to $1 million is the right amount. I think that allows for adequate improvements. I think the project plan is a great idea. No money will be spent. Bonding and borrowing are not the same, and we're not incurring, and I thank Mr. Jessup for that. That's all I have. Please vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ludwig, for your comments. I have Michelle Glassberg. Can you state your name and your address?
I'm Michelle Glassberg at 601 Heath Court. I live up in Lambertville, so I consider myself almost a next door neighbor to the Clausen property. We purchased this property 3 years ago. One of the many reasons we moved to Lambertville, and probably one of the top 3 we moved up to Lambertville, was the view that we have of that open space that is currently the Clausen property. We hope that that stays preserved, and we are 100% in support of the city's efforts to acquire the property. I would like to bring up a few points why. Aside from selfishly the wonderful view that we have on one of the few remaining open spaces in the city, it's also what I feel such a critical, important northern entrance to the city. When people come into our lovely city from the north, really one of the first things they see is this CVS shopping center. And hopefully they'll quickly look to the left and see that beautiful hill and the Clausen property, which is what we hope that gives them their first impression of the city. I would hate for that to be developed in any way that would show homes or townhouses or whatever it might be. So that's the first thing. Also, the open space is critically important to us. And also, I love the idea of some part of that property, whether it's existing building or buildings, being community gathering space. I feel this community really needs some community gathering space, especially once we're able to gather. I think it'll be healing for the community. And I think it will help preserve and improve our quality of life, not just our open space. So again, I'm 100% in support of the council proceeding as recommended with the bond ordinance and to preserve the property. Thank you so much.
groups. Thank you for your comments, Michelle. I have Judith, I'm sorry, something's happening here. I have Judith Bramer. I can hear you.
Okay. It's Judith Bremer. I live at 141 North Union Street, and I just want to vote or state my support for the bond. And I would hate for Lambertville to miss this opportunity. But I also have Dan Sider here, who probably wants to say more.
So I think we still have 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Your name and your address.
My name is Dan Sider. I also live at 141 North Union Street, and we also have my daughter Ellie in support of this. Just wanted to say I am in full support of the council moving forward here. I appreciate the dialogue that has taken place here tonight, both at the council level and within the community. And we got a little bit of a history lesson from Lou to boot. So thank you, Lou, for the history lesson to go along with this. But the reason I support this is for two primary reasons. Number one, not only because of the ability for us to preserve that amazing open space that has been so talked about tonight, but number two, to give a salute to the Clausen family. So here's a family that has maintained this property for generations, and they're willing to hand it off to us, the city. And I think that is it's a proud moment for you as a council to tell them that we'll be the stewards. We will take this on and we'll make sure that it's maintained property. But I urge you, one additional thing, put a rider in that clause to say, Ed and Debbie have to come back once a year at Thanksgiving time and make sure the pies are available to the community, because I can't imagine a Thanksgiving without that pie. So
Dan, I'm so sorry, but I do think that that would be, unfortunately, I think that that would cancel the contract. So,
okay. All right. Well, maybe
I think
we'll
we have
do
to
it
allow
anyway.
Deb and Ed to retire in peace. But this is not a general offer, but I do make a mean pumpkin pie myself. So if it won't be Thanksgiving without it, I'm happy to offer one to you.
All right. We'll take that up. Thank you, Julia.
All right. Thanks, guys. Let's see here. I have Matt Hansen. Can you state your name and your address?
Matt Hansen, 105 Douglas Street. So I just want to start with that I grew up in Huron County, and I rode my bike here through high school in New Hope and Lambertville because of the area that it was. Artists, people that accepted LGBT individuals. And so what concerns me about this is that we continue to possibly take out debt. What we've heard for the past several years is that we can't afford to take out debt. And now we're taking out more. And who will be able to afford to live here? Will the artists be able to live here? Will the LGBTQ individuals who framed this community for so long be able to live here? And it concerns me so much. I love this community, and I moved here 7 years ago officially in the town of Lambertville because I wanted to grow up here. Didn't want to be in a big city. I didn't want to be in a small town, and this really fits my credo. The problem is we can't afford to do this. I mean, we've been told for 2.5 years or 3 years now that we can't afford things from the mayor and the administration. And now we can afford this, and I just don't think we can. If the garbage trucks break down, if the streets break down, we can't afford this because we'll have to bond more debt at one point to increase our spending. And I just want everyone to know that I support preserving space. I think it's so important, but I just don't think we can afford this time. And I think we need to look at passing this, unfortunately, and passing on this and looking at preserving our already existing sites, the Acme site, the City Hall, the library, and really developing them to be our crown jewels. But I just don't know how we can afford to continue this. And as a small Huron County boy that came from Ringo's, I don't know if other people will be able to move here in the future if we continue to spend money like this. So I wish we could afford it, but we can't. and I wish we could, but I just want to say that and thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate it. I have Andrew Clifford on the line.
Yes, hello. It's actually Marcia O'Connell at Andrew Clifford's computer. I'm at 115 North Main Street. So I just wanted to indicate that I support the purchase 100%. I also support the increased bond issue, which I wish were also on the table tonight. I encourage the previous speaker to read and listen to all of the incredible research that's been done that indicates that we can actually afford this and that this is tax neutral. So people need to do their research to be confident in saying whether or not something is affordable. This has been researched by experts, and I am willing to believe that the experts know what they're talking about. The only comment I really wanted to make is that I hope everyone in Lambertville realizes we are in an extremely enviable position, which is that we all actually agree. And I would argue that even Councilwoman Lambert agrees that this is a great idea because it's exactly what she ran on, that we don't want to preserve open space, that we don't want more development, that we don't want Lambertville bigger, we want it better. And so we all agree. Anyone listening to this from outside of Lambertville would say, you have an amazing town. You all agree on what's important, and you're only and the important discussion you're having is about the little details. So have that discussion, but please realize that we are in an enviable position to do something spectacular for this town that we all love and actually all feel very similarly about. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich and Mary Friedman, if you could state your name and your address.
Hi, this is Mary Friedman, and I'm speaking on behalf of both Rich and I. We live at 37 Perry Street. We've lived here for 22 years. I'm not going to take a whole lot of time because a lot of people have already said what we want to say. But first, I want to thank the mayor and council for all of their hard work on this project. I want to thank the Claussens for giving the city the time necessary to review the purchase, and just state that we strongly support this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to preserve open space and prevent further overdevelopment in Lambertville. We believe it's very important that the city has control over the outcome of the Holcomb House, which is the Washington headquarters house, which Lou Tobaz actually very eloquently explained its importance, and we believe it is so important to preserve this historic landmark. We do support including not just the purchase price, but the additional approximately $1 million for the potential additional plans, maintenance, restoration of the property. We are taking the tactic that we believe it is net neutral in terms of taxes, and we believe the experts, although it sounds like other people do not. And we implore all council members to vote in favor of the approximately $3.8 million bond tonight, because a housing development will surely be there if it's sold to another buyer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask folks, you know, I appreciate everybody sticking to their time here, but commenting on other people's comments is not appropriate. I know we've had multiple folks here commenting on people's comments. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, and you should address your comments directly to the council so that we don't get into he said, she said. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, and you know, I think that's the best way for us to move forward here. So from moving on, can we please make sure that you're addressing your comments directly to myself and the council? Jim Mestrich, would you mind saying your name and your address?
You're muted, Jim.
Got it.
There
Can
you
you
go.
hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
All right. I'm you know, kind of a technophobe. Anyway, Jim Mastridge, 127 North Union Street. So first of all, I want to thank the mayor, the city council, and the CAT for all the hard work they've done. I really appreciate that. Just a few comments, basically reiterating what a number of people have said. I think this is a fantastic opportunity to preserve valuable open space in our town and an historic property. I want to recognize the Claussens' generosity in offering to the city the opportunity to acquire this property that might otherwise will for sure have gone to development. And this is the last opportunity to preserve this open space. That's a simple fact of the matter. Lastly, I want my future grandchildren to have the opportunity to sled on that hill. It's part of the special thing about this town, as my kids did when they were little. So I wish to encourage the council to move forward to acquire the Clausen property. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Brown, can you state your name and your address?
Hi, I'm Carrie Brown, 58 Buttonwood. Myself and my husband very much support this ordinance, and urge the council to please vote to pass this immediately. I can't really speak, eloquently to the financial piece of this, but yeah, I love this town. We moved here particularly because of the open space and that it wasn't super overdeveloped. We have a daughter who goes to LPS, who, like a few people have said, spends the entire winter on the hill with all the other kids in town. And I know that might seem like an insignificant thing, but it isn't to a lot of the families that live here and the children. And people move to this town, like I said, for the beauty of it and the open space. And I think that if someone else purchases this, which they will, it's going to really significantly change the structure of this town. And I would argue that people wouldn't want to move here if it's overdeveloped. And I think that obviously would really hurt the town. So I, again, strongly support this and do hope that it passes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Colm Quinn. Can you state your name and your address?
Colm Quinn, 265 North Main Street. Simply want to say I support the project, and I hope that you will pass the bond ordinance tonight. Whatever we feel about what may or may not happen on subsequently, basically this is right now a once and once only opportunity, and frankly I would much rather trust the city as a caretaker for this property than a private developer. To going back to the discussion about the CAT survey, you could look at the CAT survey in isolation, but I'd just like to point out that at the last city council election, overdevelopment and preservation of land was a major issue. And it seemed to me that voters voted fairly decisively in the direction of avoiding overdevelopment. And in that context, I would actually like to thank the mayor. I would like to thank the council and the CAT for actually responding to that. And I think this project is a perfect example of what we were asking for. Finally, just in terms of use, and I got to break the rules here a little bit by just referencing something that was mentioned earlier. I actually live directly opposite the property. In fact, my front porch actually is directly opposite the driveway. As somebody living there, I would really welcome the continued use of the market, and I would really welcome the use of some of the existing structures as community space. So as somebody living there, I would certainly have no objection to the property is pristine, but it's also a working property, and there's no reason not to continue that. So hopefully I would ask you all to basically support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I will note, I think there's been just general agreement that we will, if we pass this bond ordinance and require that we will have long-term conversations about how the site is used. So if we can keep the comments to the bond ordinance at hand, that may help us get through this a little quicker. So the question on the table really is the bond ordinance and the acquisition at this point. Andre Saint Armand, Andre, you want to give your name and address?
Hi, this is April Linder, but I'm here with Andre Saint Amant, and I am at 54 Brunswick Avenue. And actually, what I'm about to say just maybe got mooted by the fact that you just narrowed the scope a bit, but I do feel like I've waited this long, and I do want to speak my mind. So while I understand that the time-sensitive nature of the sale of the Clausen Farm made it unfeasible to do a referendum regarding the purchase, I would like to hear a pledge from the mayor and from council that once we purchase it, no major usage decisions will be made without a referendum. And I'm specifically thinking about the possibility of moving the police department onto the Clausen Farm, which seems prohibitively expensive, impractical, and unnecessary. And I also just want to add the point that raising taxes in any significant way will price out many of the people who contribute to the special feel of Lambertville that drew my husband and me to the city 5 years ago. I'm thinking specifically of artists and some longtime residents. We are a diverse community, as has been pointed out, but we won't be if we price out those who can't afford steeply rising taxes. So that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much. I have Megan and Marissa. Can you state your name and your address?
Hi, this is Megan Barnwell and Marissa Bellino. We're at 59 South Main Street. We support the acquisition and preservation of the property as well as the additional bond ordinance. I respect that the financing and taxes are complicated and stressful, and that there are other projects the city needs to tend to. And thank you to the mayor and the council and the CAT for all your hard work. But I believe that this community is completely capable of reimagining the property to serve its very own needs, which are more complex than we can fathom. There are other ways to measure the value of the property. For instance, we could value the ecosystem services and open space, as well as the historical significance. We need to invest in the community by investing in the space. There is so much potential for the school and Fisherman's Mark to connect with that space, as well as fixed and low income families in the community. We personally would volunteer our time to help with the garden and keep the sledding alive. We think a lot of people would participate in the redevelopment and maintenance of the property. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. I'm going to move on to Kay Ferry.
Kathy Ferry.
You must unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, my name is William Ferry, 245 Brunswick Avenue, speaking on behalf for my wife Kathy and our daughter Shannon. Good evening to the mayor and the council. We cannot think of a decision that would be more impactful to Lambertville and beneficial to this community. The purchase of this precious piece of property by the city would be one of the greatest gifts to the residents today, honoring the past and providing safekeeping of the land for future generations. And we applaud and appreciate the efforts of Ed and Debbie Clausen, the City Council, and the CAT Group for your time and efforts for working to do what is best for this community that we all so much love. To the City Council, as the current stewards of the city, we encourage and urge you to support the purchase of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Jeanette Jordan. Can you state your name and your address?
Oh. Jordan, I'm at 16 South Union Street. I jotted down some notes. I'll try to run through them quickly. I hope they're concise. I am not a fan of this bond ordinance. I would love to see this property preserved. I am not a fan of overdevelopment by any means. And I'm sure we would be hard pressed to find any of our friends and neighbors who would want to see that property developed. However, I'm not convinced that it's the most fiscally responsible decision for the city to make. I've heard you and I've seen the presentations talking about this being tax neutral. I'd like to remind everybody that I believe the numbers that we're looking at do not take into account any maintenance that would be required from the crumbling infrastructure that was of the highest importance at this time last year. So while we see wiggle room in that chart that was presented, a lot of that does need to be earmarked to take care of other items around the city. Going back to the overdevelopment conversation, I find it very exciting to hear so many people involved in this call and interested in preserving property and stopping overdevelopment. I would love to encourage you to take a look at some of the other developments going on in town right now, and maybe listen in on a couple of the planning board meetings to hear some of the other projects that are going on. Nothing that involves the city needing to spend money, but maybe policing the developers in town a little better. And I would love to hear your voices involved in those conversations. Regarding this property being on the books and adding value to our books, that's all well and good, but unfortunately property on the books doesn't help us pay our bills. And if we're going to put it into preservation, the idea of then reselling it would not really yield very much profit for us. So that's not necessarily our get out of jail free card. Finally, I don't believe that we've seen yet what our carry costs of this property are going to be, what our ongoing responsibility to maintain this another historic property for our city. And that's something I would love to see. And with that, I'd like to also point out that, you know, this is not the first, and I think I have lost count of how many times we've heard the board discuss a bond ordinance that we have to get it through because it takes too long to get them through, even though we don't really know the cost of our project and how much money the project is going to cost. And I feel like that's an okay argument once or twice, but we've been hearing a lot of that. And I think we need to put the work in before we come before this board and ask for money. Lastly, regarding the CAT survey, I would like to agree that non-statistical samples are not extrapolated. We do not know the demographics of who was able to respond, and I don't think it's fair to continue to imply that an overwhelming majority of this community spoke in favor of this project. 5 seconds, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make two clarifications here. Jeanette, you're absolutely right that this bond ordinance is time sensitive. That's unfortunately just based on the agreed upon closing time. I would like to say, you know, unfortunately, all of the modeling that we did on making this budget neutral, not increasing our debt service payments, was based on not only the borrowing for this property, but also for understanding that we're going to have somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 of annual capital expenditure. And that was based on a $4.1 million bond. We're putting forward here a $3.7 million bond. So that will actually work towards our favor in terms of affordability. Okay, moving on. Chris Register, if you could please state your name and your address.
Yeah, hi, Chris Register here, resident of 28 Elm Street in town. I'll try to be as quick as possible for everyone's sanity. So like most of the other residents that have spoken here tonight, and I believe like the vast majority of Lambertville residents, I support the purchase of the Clausen property. My daughter goes sledding here all the time. She probably went sledding 30 times this winter. She can walk there. You're not going to find another such property. We all know it. And I have to say, it was an absolute godsend this year, given how cloistered we've all been. I'm so grateful that the Clausen property allows us to use, that the Clausen family allows us to use this property. And I really hope that the kinds of experiences that me, my daughter's friends have had there will be available to future generations. To those talking about pricing people out, I literally cannot afford to buy a home in this town. Nevertheless, I support the purchase of the property. I think if you're worried about affordability, I'd encourage you to support building affordable housing. And lastly, I just want to say I think it would be an absolute tragedy to miss this opportunity. I can assure you the residents of Lambertville overwhelmingly demand this action. It is clear. Everyone I speak to supports this, and the you know, it's sort of a statistical fact based on the responses we've gotten. So the Democratic voice is clear on this issue. Please think of the kids and do not mess this up.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I have Cynthia Yan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to congratulate you. First, I want to say I'm Cynthia Yan. I live at 89 North Union Street. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my daughter, Caitlin Shoemaker, who graduated from South Hunterdon. We are in very much support of this. I am a member of the CAT, so I want to disclose that. I am a senior citizen. I am retiring on September 1st from my job. I am concerned about my ability as a taxpayer to continue to live here. However, my issue here is it's a legacy issue. You know, as people that care about Lambertville, I've only lived here 14 years. I've lived in the area for 35. But I have to say, if we miss this, we have messed up. I have gone sledding down Clausen's Hill. My daughter and I have, you know, for many, many years. And I think people who are scared about the taxes need to really listen to the answers. The city has provided them. People before me have said this. It is not going to break us to buy this. We do have clear issues with our finances and we need to address that. But this is not the time to be hesitant and not go forward and purchase this pristine property. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Evan Lyde. Can you state your name and your address?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Evan Lyde, 9 Arnett Avenue. So I took some notes as I was waiting, so I'll just read what I've written so I don't go over time. I've been on the call for a while. I haven't heard a single person say that they're in favor of preserving the Clausen property and moving the police station there. Everyone's in favor of preserving the property. That's a no-brainer, but nobody wants the police station. So why are we trying to put it there? And it's because we have an affordable housing problem. But my understanding is there aren't any developers who submitted any bids to redevelop the existing police station property.
Evan, I'm going to just interrupt you here. The police station payment for any police station improvements on this bond has been removed. We are not debating putting the police station on this property. We are talking strictly about acquisition and improvements based on public access, safety, and I think one other thing, but there's no city use in this bond.
Sure, but then Councilman Stegman asked you about city use on this property and you're not willing to say that you're not going to put the police station here. So let's be honest with everyone. Are you going to put the police station here? Because that's what it sounds like. This is not a dictatorship.
I have a council that would have to support that decision and support a bond, which requires a four-person majority.
Could my time please stop? Because I was talking and then I got interrupted. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about what we're actually talking about here. So,
well, this is public comment, right? Correct. And I am talking about the police station that you want to put here. Let's go back and talk about the CAT survey results. I have the CAT survey results. I had to file an Oprah request to get them. And when I look at them, first of all, the interesting thing is the business owners who submitted their vote, they said almost 50-50, you know, that they are not in support. So half of them are, half of them aren't. And to me, that shows that those business owners, we have not been doing enough for them. And I feel bad about that. When I look at the CAT survey, I still don't know who was entitled to fill that out. My parents didn't fill that out. They're taxpayers here. They're not registered to vote here. So is this truly demonstrative? I'm not sure. You know, I don't think there's enough information out there for us to determine that that CAT survey was fair. So I think from everything I've heard, I think it's very clear. People want to preserve this property. Not a single person wants to put the police station on there from what I've heard tonight. So why doesn't council say, we're going to go ahead with this purchase, but we're not going to put the police station there? We have that ability to do that tonight. So that's what I'd like council to do.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Graver, you're up.
Hi, Doug Graver, 406 Surgeon Drive, Lambertville. I first want to say that a genuine heartfelt thank you to everyone on the board and the mayor for all the work you've put into this. It's just amazing. The second thing I want to say is it's pretty clear by the comments the people have spoken in support of this property being purchased. I want to just talk about the bond. The interest rates right now are very low. This is the time to take the bond out and not to do it in two parts. I'm concerned about the cost if we do a second bond purchase. I also want to draw everyone's attention to the property values in this town and what things are going for. 42 York Street's on the market for 1.75. 22 Jefferson just sold for 1.6. 119 North Union sold for 1.3. So the last thing I want to say is we really need to pay attention and not be penny wise and pound foolish. This property, it would be just a disaster to lose this property. And I want it to be saved for generations of sledders. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment. Manisha?
Hi, this is Manisha Agarwal, 414 Sergeant Drive, neighbor of Doug Graver. I just wanted to voice the thanks to the mayor and city council for all the work, as everyone's been saying, and I fully support preserving the open space and purchasing this property. It's beautiful. I love looking at it, and my son loves sledding on the hill. I love watching the kids on the hill. It's a part of Lambertville that is just so special, and for anything to happen to it is just a disgrace. So I urge the council to vote to move forward with this purchase, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Jackie Middleton on. Can you? Sorry. Here. Can you hear? Can you speak?
Yes. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes. Sorry about that. There was some weird stuff happening here.
That's okay. I'm Jackie Middleton. I live at 251 North Union Street. I want to say that I really appreciate the council and the mayor for the tireless public service that they provide the city. I mean, the amount of time you all spend is, I'm just really grateful for that. I personally support preservation of the property. I'm also the land acquisition director of the Huntington Land Trust, which is an environmental organization whose mission is to preserve land and support farmland preservation as well as open space. And the Huntington Land Trust Boards of Trustees also supports the preservation of this property. So that's it. I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Nowick, can you state your name and your address?
Yes, good evening. My name is Andrew Nowick. I live at 190 North Union Street, and I'm a member of the CAT. I just wanted to take a second to rise in full-throated support of the bond ordinance, $3.7 million, and the acquisition of the Clausen property. Many people have spoken very eloquently this evening, and I appreciate all the public feedback and viewpoints on this. And I thank the council and I thank the mayor for all their diligence and work in this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have Megan Ruff.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Megan Ruff. I live at 65 South Main Street. I've been a resident of Lambertville for 20 years. I am also a longtime member of the Recreation Commission, now officially the Parks and Recreation Commission in the city, and have been here probably on the board for close to 10 years. What I really want to say is that I am in full support of the bond ordinance, but more importantly, the extra money for the maintenance and planning of the property. On multiple occasions, we've, purchased or used funds to purchase properties such as the hill behind Ely Park or even Cherry Street. And we have never saved money or used money, requested money, sorry, to do upkeep and maintenance. And I think as a Parks and Recreation Commission member and community member, one of the most important things that we need to do is have some foresight and make some smart decisions financially about how to continue to upgrade the property and also do site plan development with the possibility of doing large long-term projects. Those will certainly come in the future, but I think, you know, just looking back at Cherry Street and the steep slope behind Ely Park, is that we never had the funds, and we still don't have necessarily the funds available to make some of those improvements because we never leveraged bonds initially to cover those extra expenses. So I just want to make sure that people realize that we really need to take this seriously and think long term about how to appropriately continue to maintain the property and fully support the full bond ordinance.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I have a Clinton Street residence. Can you state your name and your address?
Yes, Lily Chen, 17 Clinton Street. I'm just going to, I guess, rephrase some of the comments that I heard tonight that were in favor of not overdeveloping Lambertville. And I wish I heard those same voices at different meetings when we were fighting the overdevelopment of Lambertville, because that would have been very helpful. We all want to preserve what we have here. I think that's why we all moved here. We love what we see. We love how we feel here. And I want to get a commitment from you or the council that if we were to bond to save and preserve this farm, that we are not moving the police station there, that we will keep it pristine like everyone wants it to be. And I think that Sledding Hill is wonderful. And I think that's been the image that saved the city through this pandemic. And maybe that's why there's so much passion about this, because it's been a really awful year. We've been traumatized. And I think having children sledding down that hill is what made everyone so passionate tonight. They want to save it. It's the thing that saved them through this horrible year. I get it. However, we do have financial responsibilities. And I also want a commitment that the police station, since we don't even know what the cost will be to relocate the police station, that we are not looking at this as the first step in relocating the police station there. And I would like to know, have we done a true assessment, a critical assessment of what would it cost to relocate the police station?
So the answer is yes, we have done a critical assessment, and I can say now that we won't be doing any site improvements, either related to or unrelated to the police, or excuse me, related to the police. We won't be doing any site improvements on this bond. And that if we do a full site plan, that is where a full project plan, that's where we will decide the fate of the log cabin as well as all the other outbuildings. So you have my word and the word of this bond council that we will not be spending the money that we're debating now on moving the police to this site.
Well, you're not really answering my question. We're not spending this bond, but does that mean we're not moving the police station there?
No, we are, as we discussed at the beginning of this meeting, we are going to continue to discuss the use of this property, and we will continue to have that debate.
We will continue to have the debate of whether
about if we move the police station to the Clausen property, or if there's another more appropriate place for the police station.
So you're saying that's still a possibility that we will move the police department to the Clausen house?
Yes. But it will not be paid for with this bond.
So is that the whole strategy of us buying this farm, is to have place to house the police station?
Under no circumstance.
And not to preserve that Norman Rockwell view?
Lily, respectfully, that's why I removed it from this bond, to ensure that folks knew that the primary chief concern of this council and myself is to preserve this site and to make it accessible to the public. So I've removed that. We will have that conversation at a later time. The only goal that we have here tonight is to acquire this property and ensure that we have the funds necessary to maintain and build and to maintain and improve that property for public use.
And I would like to make another statement since I have 23 seconds. We did a survey, 85% of the participants, and they're not participants, they're families. They wanted a referendum and you disregarded that.
I'm not sure who they and or we are, but thank you. I also didn't see the results of that survey. So
I sent you the results.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your comments and your concerns. I have Lori Howe.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, Lori Howe, 213 North Main. I'm also speaking on behalf of Tom Amoriello, who's here with me. I'll make this quick. I echo the sentiments of many who have spoken tonight. I want to thank you guys for all the work you've done in the last several months, the mayor, the council, the CAT team. I do support the acquisition. We do support the acquisition of the Clausen property and the additional funds in the bond ordinance. I'll quickly say it's a part of an identity that we've agreed that's important to us. The history that Lou went through, the kids sledding. We are the best custodians for this. We will lose our voice in this if we don't act quickly. It's a sale, people buy it. I appreciate the Clausens. I want to say thank you very much. They've been so generous over the years, and they're supposed to be retiring right now, and they are holding on to this just for our city. So thank you so much, and best of luck in retirement. Quite frankly, I don't want to sound flippant, but this is something I would look at my partner and say, we got to work it out, but we're doing this. It's just one of those opportunities that doesn't come up again. It won't come up again. I think it's worth it. We're a village. It takes a village to make something happen. We've gone through stuff before. This is worth it for us, and I really encourage the council to vote yes on this plan. I think it's also in very good faith to ensure that we secure the property, and then pause and put a project plan together. I thank you for that. I thank you for removing everything else, but then I thank you for the foresight of maintenance and some work that absolutely would need to be done. And we can't come back 20 times with our cup out. We've just got to make a decision and move forward for our future, for the kids, for our town, and to do just what's right. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I have Kate Larkin.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Kate Larkin, 11 Clinton Street. I just want to echo a lot of the comments I heard earlier. Thank you, particularly for all of your efforts on this, the council, all the efforts that folks have dedicated to this, and the CAT. I know it's been a difficult process, a lot of folks, a lot of hours. I do believe I'm fully support acquiring the property. I fully support the full amount of the bond. I agree with a lot of the comments around the town, the feel of the town, the sledding on the hill. I do not have children in town. I have two beautiful nephews, but I think that what that affords us here in town is really just priceless, and I fully support us moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I have MH. Hold on, something weird's happening. MH, can you speak?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, this is Mindy Hurd. I'm at 104 North Union Street. I'm also speaking for my partner, Michael Marks, and our 4 girls. I've lived here in Lambertville since 1994. I plan on living here for the rest of my days. Love this city, love everyone, love the community. Really want to thank the mayor and the council and CTA for their efforts and transparency. And of course, want to thank the Clausen family as well. And just, we just want to strongly voice our support for both the purchase of the property as well as the additional bond ordinance.
Okay, thank you so much for your comment. I have Sue, I'm sorry, Sue Beegent. I don't have my glasses on.
Sue Beegent, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I got to keep my glasses on.
Right. I live at 33 Jefferson Street. I've lived here for 17 years. And I also would like to thank all of the work done by the council and the CAT and also the Clausen family. I do support the purchase. I'm also in full support of the full amount of the bond. And I would particularly like to pick up the point that Megan Ruff made, because she talked about the long-term upkeep and making sure that we have enough money to do that, and making sure that in full stewardship, we don't just make the purchase and then at some point we let this fall into disrepair. A lot of travesties have been sort of made in decisions, probably things like where the gas stations sit, where the CVS sits. Let us not lose this site. Let us keep it for generations, and let us have the long view, and therefore have the full amount of the bond available so that we can have the right debate and have the right monies available to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Marlena Ubon. Marlena, can you talk?
Hi, my name is Haley. I live in 20 Elm Street, Lambertville, New Jersey. I love the hill. Me and my friends go there every day when it's cold and snowy. So I fully support the town buying the property.
Thank you so much, Haley. I really appreciate your comment, and thank you so much for participating in our meeting tonight.
You're welcome.
All right. Reggie Ross. You gotta unmute yourself. Hold on. Can you unmute yourself and give us your name and your address?
Can you hear me now?
We can.
All right, great. My name is Reggie Ross. I live at 56 Delaware Avenue. I've been in, I've been in real estate finance since I got out of business school, many moons ago. So my thoughts about this are both as a finance professional as well as, a dad who's watched his little girls sled down that hill for a few years now. It's really great. It's really a unique experience. I would say, given the asset value the city has, the value of this asset, the city will have several options with this site that might not exist for other historical sites the city's involved with. If something did happen and we needed to unload it. So, I think the facts are clear. We can afford it. And more importantly, we should afford it. It'd be great if we could just trust that private developers would do what's in the best interest of the city with the site. But unfortunately, that's just not the way of the world. I think the city should stay in control of what happens on that site, or get okay with letting developers decide. Because in real estate, you can't drive the bus from the back seat. So stay in the front seat. Put yourselves in a position to make smart decisions down the road. It seems clear from what the professionals have had to say that there's no financial downside to approving the money for the improvements. If the intention is to ensure follow through on what you're saying you want to do with it. I honestly believe at least the stated objections are more than accounted for in the general mechanics of issuing this bond, and also the commitments to not move forward with spending a penny without an agreement. So it just seems like the net effect of not raising the money for the improvement seems to me like borrowing money for a car but not the wheels. It just doesn't make sense unless you really just didn't want a car in the first place. Similarly, it seems more likely that not approving the money for improvements only makes sense if you really don't want to preserve site there. And I know that's not the intention, and I'm not suggesting that there is an alternative intention, but unfortunately, that will be the effect. So I suggest as council get on with it. Approve the money, close this deal. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you so much. I have Michelle Harris.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So my name is Michelle Harris. I'm at 26 Church Street. I am a member of the CAT. My position on this has been made public in previous meetings. I remain in full support of both the purchase and the bond ordinance. It's up for consideration this evening. So that remains unchanged. Just a few observations. And first, just starting with a thank you to Council President Taylor. I don't believe I've heard your position on this, at least not prior to tonight, at least not stated in the way you stated it tonight. I really appreciate your organized summary about your position and the reasoning behind it. That kind of helped solidify some thoughts that I had rolling around in my head as well. So thank you for that. There's been some concern raised about the previous knowledge of the survey and whether it was adequately announced and who knew about it and who didn't. I would point out that the new council members came on, I believe, in January. The survey was issued subsequent to that. There are also active community groups that have robust and effective outreach who are represented on this call, and everyone knew about the survey. So I would say that we all had, I know myself too, both in my role in the CAT, but also as a private citizen, made sure that I was reaching out to everybody that I could to say, do you know this survey is here? We really want to get full participation. Everyone had that, that's been speaking on this call, had that same information. So I trust that that was all put out there. We had the opportunity to advertise sufficiently. A comment about the call results this evening. So I've loved to hear so many new voices tonight. I have listened in on all of the calls since the fall when this first came onto the agenda, when this topic first came on the agenda. And I really appreciate all of the community getting involved in this in such an active and vocal way tonight. I have been informally I'm a numbers person, and I've been informally kind of tallying comments. So far tonight, we've had 44 comments in support and 9 commenters. Those are individual commenters, 9 raising concerns or against the bond ordinance. So 44 versus 9 this evening so far. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Madeline, if you can state your name and your address.
Yes, hi. I'm Madeline Berlin, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, Bruce Berlin. We live at 7 Northfield Court. I've lived in Lambertville for 26 years. I'm going to keep this short. I actually was not going to vote, but I've been listening very carefully, and I think it's important that my voice be heard. I strongly support the bond ordinances and the acquisition of the Clausen property. I think this is an opportunity that we should absolutely not pass up. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Sean Ellis as the final commenter, and then we have one person who has spoken already that has their hand raised. Sean Ellis.
Hi, this is Sean Ellis at 204 Brunswick Avenue. I just want to say that I actually came into this meeting not quite knowing where I stood, and I wanted to kind of wait and hear from everyone before kind of making a statement and asking a question, because the one thing that was blocking me from supporting it, which I am in full support of now, but the one thing that was blocking me was the possibility of the police station going there. And I want to ask the council, each council member, if we do end up purchasing this land, how do you feel about a police station on that property? And I'll take the answer offline. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, that is a conversation that we are going to have weeks and months to debate as we go over our the site plan development, and that as we have affirmed at the beginning of this meeting, no final site project project plan will move forward or be spent money on until we have majority support of that project on this from this board. So rather than
Julia, with all due respect, my question was to the council members.
Sean, with all due respect, you must, by Robert's Rules of Order, address all of your questions to the chair.
Okay.
Now,
and who's the chair?
Me.
Okay.
Now, all I'm asking is, out of respect for everyone's time, we still have 130 members of the community on this call. We will have months and weeks to debate this, and the council can start to formulate their opinion. But the question at hand is about the acquisition of the property and about the $1 million in excess of the acquisition cost in order to maintain the property.
Okay, I just want to make sure that this is not any kind of bait and switch of any sort, because that is what my support is contingent on. So thank you, and I guess we'll find that answer out later.
Sean, just to be clear, you know what, Council President, if you'd like to clarify for Sean how it is impossible to have a bait and switch on a property acquisition, I would truly appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll just, well, I will answer the question directly. I don't have an opinion yet on whether or not the police site should move to this site. It is dependent on a lot of variables that I just don't have the information on. That's my personal take at this time. However, as the mayor said, this bond does not provide us with the funding required to move the police site. So with this bond ordinance, we cannot do that. We have agreed by resolution earlier tonight unanimously that we will not spend any money of what we're approving, what may get approved tonight without a full site plan. The process of creating that full site plan will include a facilities review of current and current facilities, and if we purchase this property, facilities here, and allow us to think holistically about what needs to go where, what it really costs us, and allow us to look at things, I think, from a different perspective than we all have been looking at them. We will have a lot of different, better information, and we'll have to weigh the opportunity costs for each of those options. So I can't answer your question right now, Sean, but I can tell you that as of whatever happens tonight doesn't mean we will be moving the police site.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, there are 3 more hands raised, and then we'll go back to commenters that would like to speak again, and then we will go back to final comments from the board. Colleen Riley. Can you speak, Colleen?
Yes, it's Mike Redmond, 23 Perry Street. I think everyone is supportive of preserving the Holcomb House, saving the hill for the sled. People's concerns are budgetary, right? And so my thought is, was there any conversation about subdividing the property? It's an 8-acre site. The Holcomb House, the sledding hill is subdivided out. That reduces the cost of the project, which I think is the concern. I don't think there's any concern about preserving. I think everyone's behind that. The concern is about costs. So has subdividing the property been talked about? Thank you.
There's been no public conversation from the council regarding subdivision. My answer to that would be that the goal here, the key primary, most important thing is that we preserve this land as, open space, and that we do so in a way that maintains the historic view shed that we currently have to the best of our abilities. Subdivision, I think, would move against that goal, but I would be open to having a conversation with the council about it. I don't think it's come up.
I think it's something that's worthy of exploring. We are in fiscal trouble. All we have to do is look at our public works facility to know that the town has problems with its finances. So we all accept, or I accept, that this is an incredible opportunity, but how do we make this opportunity work with all the other challenges? And I think we really have to be introspective and honest about that. If we can't afford to have the dump open on a Saturday morning, we really need to be thinking hard about spending millions of dollars. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment.
Mayor, I would like to have us consider ending public comment after the last person has their hand up right now. I really value everyone's opinion, but we're hearing much of the same thing, and it's almost at 3.5 hours.
I would agree with you. Are there any questions or concerns from council?
Questions about what?
About shutting
Oh.
public comment down after John?
Well, there seem to be 4 hands up, so why don't we go through that and then and make them shorter, and let's move on.
Okay, Sharon Dietrich. Sharon, can you speak?
Hi, this is Joan Millsaps. I'm speaking with Sharon Dietrich. We're here together. We both feel strongly that the Clausen project, the property, is open property, something that we really value in Lambertville. We're very strongly supportive of the town purchasing that and moving forward. Short and sweet. That's what we wanted to let you know.
Can I get your address, please?
33 Rock Creek Woods Drive.
Okay, thank you so much. We have Paul Stevens.
Hi, Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry Street. I guess, so this is the first reading of the ordinance, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so there's still time for me to decide exactly where I'm at on this. And I have to admit, I'm conflicted. I mean, the idea sounds great and I love it, except for the fact that everything else I see happening in terms of the affordability of town. And I know this is, quote, budget neutral because the debt service is not going up, but I'm not clear yet on where the revenue is going to come from to pay for the fact that there's going to be an increase in the amount of revenue that has to be raised because of the fact that the debt service reserve is now gone. And so that is a concern of mine. And then the other thing is, I have a concern because when I sat in Monday night for the school board meeting, and they're proposing a $29 million bond ordinance for grades pre-K through 8 schools, one at West Amwell and here in Lambertville. Once again, individually, they all sound great, but now when you start to bring it all together, it starts to add up to a lot of money for folks in terms of taxes. And that directly impacts affordability for a lot of people that live here. Okay, then they're part of the diversity of what makes Lambertville, Lambertville. And I just think sometimes we lose that. It's not a clear-cut case for me yet, one way or the other. And I hope by the time that the second reading comes around, I can make up my mind. But anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have John Felon, and then we have one second comment, and then we will close the public hearing. John, can you?
Yeah, can you hear me, Mayor?
We can, yes.
Yeah, hi. My name is John Felon. I live at 613 Heath Court in Lamberts Hill. I am the closest home to the Clausen property in our development. I see it every day, morning, noon, and night, and I strongly support the town purchasing the property and developing it for town use. I will not repeat the reasons that people who support it gave because enough said for that, but I do want to put in a plug for the wildlife. Being here, seeing it 24/7, I can tell you that there are a herd of up to 20 deer that camp out on that site. We have red foxes, we have beavers, We have all sorts of wildlife. And my hope would be that as you develop, if you purchase, which I hope you do, as you develop it into a park, that you would try to respect the habitat of the animals who live there. That's all I have to say.
I think all I can say to that is you had me except for the deer. And that Lambertville goes wild, I'm sure we'll be holding our feet to the fire to ensure that that property will be maintained as a refuge for our native species in town.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have the last comment, public comment of the evening. Matthew Hansen, can you speak? Are you permitted?
Yes, thank you. Matt Hansen, 105 Douglas again. I just don't want to be interrupted through this process, so sorry if I'm saying things, but I just want to state that this is not a tax neutral situation. I know the city has proposed that and said that, and it's been put out there. What we're doing is retiring old debt and putting new debt on the books for, I think, up to 25 years is what was on a Q&A the mayor had done. So 25 years we're going to be paying for this. So it's something we'll be paying for in addition to considering what other people have said, the school, and we'll be, adding to this, possible debt that we have to pay or taxes we have to pay. So that's one thing to think about too. And the other thing is, I love the sledding and all that, and I sled on the Everett's Hill and Ringo's. People may know Everett's, farm as a kid, but what's the liability for the city when we own it? I mean, I know we're a community, but will there be possible liabilities associated with lawsuits, or if some gosh forbid gets hurt on that hill? What happens? I love the idea of kids sledding, but someone could get hurt at some point. So I don't know what that means for us. And my final thought in question is, how are we paying for the police station site eventually? So this is all happening and we're going to buy this property supposedly. And then what are we going to do to move the police station site? Like, what is there I guess there's no plan. I've not heard a plan. So what are we going to do to then, are we going to bond more money to move the police station site? And if we move it to the Clausen property, it won't be preservation at that point. It will be, paving things and putting lights in and parking lots and things for a police station. So those are my concerns again with the site. I want to thank the CAT and the council for looking at all of options that we look at, but I have a lot of concerns about this bond.
Okay, thank you so much. So with that, we have to call the question. I know we've heard a lot from members of the public. I'd like to give everyone on council an opportunity to say their piece before we call the question for the bond.
I just want to thank all the members of the public who came tonight and spoke, gave your thoughts. I also want to thank everyone who contacted me via email. I tried to respond. I think that even though people have different opinions, that's an opportunity for us to begin to collaborate and compromise, to work together for the common good of the city. I don't view differences of opinion as a path to divisiveness. So I just wanted to put that out there for people, because there is disparate opinions on this. And the other thing I wanted to say is that many people, there are many people in the community that are fortunate enough to have the economic security to absorb a tax increase, or perhaps they're renters and it's not something that directly affects them. But there are people in the community who, they own their own homes, they've lived here, most of their lives, if not all of their lives. They live rather modestly. Many are retired and are living on their savings. And tax increases are a very real concern for them. And I want people to know that this this really, that whole issue of the potential financial impact really strikes to my core. So it's really kind of a moral issue for me. And I think that we all need to, the thing that makes Lambertville, one of the things that makes it so great is that we are a compassionate, caring community. And, you know, there may be times when we have to think of, you know, others. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that. I agree. We should all be concerned about all of our neighbors. And I think that's probably what has called each and every single one of us to service here, is a concern for not only the health and safety of our community, but also the health and safety of our neighbors. I couldn't agree with you more, Councilwoman. Would anybody else like to speak?
Yeah, Mayor, if I could, I haven't gotten much airtime today, so my apologies. For not being there in Zoom person. As I noted, I had to be in North Jersey tonight, but I did get back. And I too appreciate everyone's comments. A lot of folks wrote to me and have stopped me on the street to talk to me about this, and appreciate the comments tonight. You know, as I mentioned at the top of the show here when I was on audio only, you know, I do support the purchase of the property, and I support the bonding for additional sums to support some improvements. You know, for me, the purpose here is to preserve this as open space and to control the fate of this property. We lose a lot of control if this were to be sold to a developer. What happens to that property is going to be a pretty big impact to the community. While we don't have a precise plan for its use or all of its use yet, I think it's important. I'd rather have it in our hands than developers' hands. And to be clear, as we noted at the beginning of the meeting here, we resolved and clarified that, you know, improvements not going to happen unless there's a site plan and there's a proper vote of council. I don't know we had to do by resolution, but I think it was good to put everybody on record and to send that message to the community. I am not going to vote to support improvements that are developed ad hoc without, you know, as we mentioned, a holistic review of our other properties or something that's rushed. I imagine that this work's going to take place over a long period of time. I even suspect that the 5 current members of this governing body may not be the ones making all the decisions here. We can't do this for every property in town, you know, but this is a defining property for our community. It's historic, you know, lineage. It's you know, the ties that people have, and we've heard some of those stories of sledding and so forth. You know, the generosity that the owners have had to share that property have made this property unique. The only other thing I can think of is the Methodist Church, which has become a, you know, for, you know, skating and basketball and all sorts of, you know, community activities where somebody's really opened up their property. But in a way, we've become emotionally connected to this land in a way that I think is important. You know, some folks have talked about the police department. I know we're not going to get into that. Just to be clear, in my mind, this is not an inevitable first or second domino that's falling that leads to the police moving there. A lot has to be thought through and determined. And I don't have a position on whether it should move there or not, because we're just not there yet. You know, sometimes in life things are, you know, timing is awkward or circumstances are, you know, not perfect. The process is awkward. You know, I wish we could have had a referendum on this because I think, you know, not every issue should go to referendum, but this would have been a good one. We just didn't have the opportunity to do that without the risk of losing the opportunity to purchase this land. So while things weren't perfect, process wasn't perfect, you know, I do believe that this is the right decision to support. So today I'm going to vote to move this along in first reading to purchase property, and I do support the additional bonding for, you know, it's just bonding and it's not spending. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Does anybody else on council have any final thoughts? Councilman Stegman?
Yes, as I said earlier, that I was very fond and committed that we should preserve this property. And hearing the way that Ward just presented, how he's approaching this and how Julia Taylor is approaching this as well, because to pass resolutions in the city, once this money is there, it takes 3 yes votes to pass resolutions. My concern was that there were preconceptions about what we should do on this city, and I have reached the comfort level that I know that the public has spoken tonight. Julia Taylor and Ward are on the same page, and quite frankly, so is the mayor. And the mayor and I had a kind of heated back and forth, but we were did we not?
We certainly did, and I do think I owe you an apology for how heated that got. I care deeply about this project, but I think we all deserve to treat each other with respect, and I just want to take a second to apologize to you.
Why? Thank you, and I hope I treated you with respect as well. To that end, the mayor had spoken to me about some of the, maybe not all the reasons, but some of the reasons why she changed the direction. And it was because of what Council President Taylor and Councilman Sanders and also and Benedetta had an opportunity to one-on-one speak about this project, and I think the public should know that it was the input of all of us that influenced the mayor's path to buy this property. So I think it's a great. I can't see missing the opportunity. And I feel in a very comfortable space that whatever the master plan turns out to be, there'll be so many more factors to consider once we do our facilities review, that I think our hope is that we will have gone through every possibility about how to move forward before we move forward. And I feel comfort in that, working with the council on that, and knowing that there were 200 or so people on tonight, Mayor, that they have all heard our positions and our approaches and our concerns. And and for me, this vote tonight is something that I struggled with all day and last week and all. But what I have heard from the council tonight, and the mayor's change in her position in what this money will do, I think we're in a much better place moving forward than I thought we were. So I want to thank the council for, especially Council President Taylor, who has worked to get consensus on this. And I think the discussion tonight and the new direction of what we're going to do presently has made this so much more comfortable for me to support going forward. So thank you all.
Thank you. Council President Taylor, you've got your hand raised.
I do. Trying to keep things organized here. Just want to thank my colleagues for their thoughtfulness about this, and for all the members of the public who participated tonight or sent emails. I think it's really important to hear everybody's voice. As I stated earlier, I'm very much in support of both the purchase and this particular bond ordinance. I'm really looking forward to the process of getting more input and more data about what our next set of decisions need to be. That said, my only disappointment is that the circumstances are such we couldn't get to a place of a bigger bond at this juncture. I understand why. And we'll cross the next funding bridge when we get to it, but I'm glad that it sounds like we have ended up in a place of consensus where we can move ahead. So thanks to everybody.
I had a prepared statement here, which I think just for use of time, I'll skip. I just wanted to say that I think that this is a question that we are deliberating tonight about the cultural heart of our community. And that this is an opportunity to preserve the rural character of our town while creating something that has meaningful, real life impact on community members beyond sledding. That this can be a place of cultural, social meeting, and that we can use this property to really become the gateway of our community that I think we all want and that we deserve. And that the bond that we're considering tonight allows for the flexibility that I think we've all been craving in terms of our facilities question, as well as the maintenance of the property. I strongly believe this is the most financially responsible thing to do, and that this is the best possible way that we can steward in the right approach to preserving this land. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to pass the bond ordinance. Yeah, Bill, did you?
Cindy can read it by title.
Thank you.
Please.
Cindy, do you mind reading the ordinance by title, and then I'll ask for a motion?
No problem.
Read into first. Thank you.
A bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of property known as 260 North Main Street and related site improvements in and by the city of Lambertville in the county of Hunterdon, New Jersey, appropriating $3,770,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,590,470 bonds or notes of the city to finance part of the cost thereof.
Can I get a motion to pass on first reading that bond ordinance?
So moved.
Councilman Sanders for the first.
Second.
Council President Taylor for the second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Councilwoman Lambert.
I just want to say before I say my vote, I recognize the value of the purchase of this property, and this has been a very difficult decision for me. But I'm also keenly aware of the financial issues of the city and the challenges that we face. There was something else I was going to say, and it just fled my mind. But I wish, oh, I know what I was going to say. Thank you. I know that being opposed to this puts me in the minority, which is kind of a relief because I see the value, but I also see the value of voting yes, but also feel very strongly about needing to vote no. So I know there are many people are going to be disappointed in me, but I really feel that this is an issue of, as I said, for me, a moral issue, and therefore I feel I need to vote no.
Okay.
Councilman Sanders?
Very much respect Councilwoman Lambert's thoughts on this. So I know it's hard to swim upstream from after hearing, from so many folks. But I appreciate your rationale. I am going to vote yes and do support the purchase.
Councilman Stegman.
Well, first I'm reaching out to Ben because I know how dedicated and how difficult that decision was for her to make. And I'm not going to say that I'm surprised. I'm going to vote yes. I felt very I feel very secure in knowing that going forward, there will be much public input. There will be much deliberation. The council has, myself has heard the public tonight. There are concerns about spending, but this piece of land is it's too valuable to not, for the city not to take an active part in purchasing it. I'm not 100% comfortable about the extra money, but I tonight I have some reassurance because I know exactly where now Ward is coming from, and Council President Taylor, and and the mayor as well, about moving forward and having this property available to everyone. I don't want to rule out, and I don't think that this bond does it, the possibility of us possibly selling off one or two parts, or nothing, or one. But I think the option, I want to keep all the options open for this. And to those people who, I just want to just say one other thing, for those folks who cherished the farm market, because basically it was the Clausen's farm market. Well, just to realize, I'd love to manage expectations. It's like when a friend moves away, you love having the friend, and the person that's in there now, you don't have the same relationship with, that I understand the needs, but it's the Clausens won't be here anymore. So we have to keep an open mind about what we all expect about what's going to happen on that property. And to that, I will vote yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes.
Longest vote ever.
I have just a couple of updates before we lose everybody who's still on the call. I want to thank the 100 and almost 200 people who have borne with us as we consider obviously a really important question. Just so you understand, this is a first hearing of this ordinance.
Right.
In order for us to pass this bond and fund the project, including acquisition of the property, we have to have a second hearing and a second public hearing, which means that on April 22nd, there will be a hearing. It will have a public comment period where folks can continue to air questions, concerns. And then if that ordinance is passed by a 4-to-1 vote, at that point, we can close on the Clausen property on May 15th. However, if that vote fails, if it gets less than 4 positive votes, then we can't afford, we won't be able to fund the purchase of the property. So we are moving forward. You should, if you have cared enough to stick on this call for almost 4 hours, I recommend that you come back to the April 22nd meeting, where we will have, that's where the final decision on this bond. The number cannot change. This is the question. And until then, this is not approved. This is just moving to the next stage. The real approval for acquisition will be on April 22nd. Okay. So
Mayor, do you have the bills list?
I forgot we were doing that. Sure, let's do the bills list.
You need a motion, Mayor? I'm happy to make that motion to.
Thank you, Councilman Sanders. Can I get a second on the bills?
Second.
Second for Councilwoman Lambert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything else on that agenda, Cindy?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank goodness. Okay. I'm going to open up for public comment. We have one question hand raised, and then we're going to try to adjourn at a reasonable hour. Jimson, can you say your first and last name and your address? Can you speak, Jimson? I've asked you to unmute. If you can't unmute, I'm going to Okay, we're gonna, I'm gonna disable you unless you can unmute. Okay. And then we have a comment from Matt Hansen. Matt, can you state your first and last name and your address?
Matt Hansen, 105 Douglas Street. I would just, the agenda said April 5th, street sweeping would start, but then there was online April 18th. I just want to clarify for a couple residents when street sweeping will start again.
The answer is April 19th, I believe. Cindy, is that right? It's the Monday, halfway through April. We're doing a couple, we're taking the extra time because the weather has been like a little hinky, to ensure that it's warm enough to do the street sweeping. And we're working on doing some pothole maintenance during that extra 2 weeks instead.
It is the 19th, Mayor.
Thank you, Cindy.
So it's the 19th, right? And also you mentioned a pothole, which, you know me, but there's also a pothole on Douglas Street that showed up. So I just want to report that here. I could send an email as well, but one showed up that's pretty drastic, but I could send an email as well. But
yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending an email, we're trying to get our public works team out to fill potholes. The snow was really brutal to our roads this year. So we've had Lester and Lieutenant Brown put together what we think is a relatively comprehensive pothole list. And we're trying to address the most egregious ones first.
great, thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Young, you have been promoted.
Yeah, there I go. Yeah, there's a pothole on North Union at Delaware. Hey, we're doing that tonight. I almost fell in it a few times. So if anybody could look at it, it's probably only about 12 inches deep, but if somebody could look at that, it'd be great.
Would you mind sending me and Lester an email, and I'll try and make sure I get
Okay, all right.
And I would say for anybody else making a public comment tonight regarding potholes, that it would be a more appropriate method by which to alert us to various road improvements needed. Okay, seeing no other hands, I really appreciate everybody the thoughtfulness of this council and everybody who joined us here tonight. Can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Sanders? Who said second?
Quickly, I did.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Hi, Cindy.